This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with James O'Brien.
3 minutes after 10 is the time. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Should we begin with a little prediction? It's not a particularly clairvoyant one, but a couple of newspaper movements in the last 24 hours lead me to conclude that despite Suella Braverman's best efforts, Kemi Badenoch will be the candidate anointed by the right-wing media when it comes to the next Tory leadership election. I'm going to put that one down as an actual prediction rather than a speculation. She will be the favoured candidate. Secret meetings with Rupert Murdoch that weren't declared by her team, although according to Kemi Badenoch, that was an accident. It was inadvertent. Who here hasn't had a secret meeting with Rupert Murdoch that then they have merely forgotten to bring to the attention of the relevant authorities? I just her then. And the Daily Mail today chooses to treat her with the most fur-lined of kid gloves, and these things do not happen in a vacuum, and they do not happen by accident. So watch this space. But we will not concern ourselves with the next leader of the Conservative Party this morning. We will concern ourselves with the current leader. Do you ever find, I suppose it depends a little bit on how closely you listen to this programme, but do you ever find that you sometimes can't remember whether you collected a nugget of knowledge from the show or from somewhere else? Because we talked about HS2 last week, I think. Was it last week when the writing appeared to be on the wall for the future of the high-speed link between Manchester and Birmingham? And then I read a bit about it, both before and after, and I can't remember whether it was a superb caller to the programme or whether it was something else, possibly a letter to the Times that I read. But I cull from wherever it came from, two nuggets that I think are really interesting. And if we didn't, of course, come up with them on the programme last time we addressed this issue, then I can possibly introduce you to them now. The first was this. There was definitely their letter to the newspaper. This definitely didn't happen on the programme, from the fellow that had run the first section, which I think came in on more or less on time and close to being on budget. And he wrote a letter to the newspaper in which, unless I dreamt it, of course, which is always the third option. So did it happen on the show? Did it happen somewhere else? Or did I actually dream the whole thing like, I don't know, Bobby Ewing shortly before getting in the shower? I don't know, but I don't think I dreamt it. I'm sure I saw a letter somewhere from somebody heavily involved in the delivery of HS1 saying that to his shock and surprise, no one had ever spoken to him about HS2. So, that is actually remarkable, isn't it? Anyway, so that's interesting nugget of knowledge number one. A nugget of knowledge number two, which quite possibly came from that letter or the same dream or this show, was that the biggest mistake you can make, apparently, is to announce what the budget is. That's really interesting, isn't it? I once got offered a gig on a newspaper. I don't know if I should tell you this, but I've already started the story. I once got offered a gig on a newspaper that I quite fancied, but I was really, really busy at the time. I was working on a book, as it happens. And I thought, I just can't, because I know myself well enough to know that I can't do it. I'll just be up against deadlines, and I won't be able to deliver of the kind of quality I'd be able to deliver if I had time on my hands. So I told them this. They'd made me what I thought was a really generous offer, a really good offer for a newspaper column. And I don't have an agent, so I don't have anyone going in to sort of squeeze the pips for me. So I sent a lovely letter back saying, I'm terribly sorry, genuinely too busy. And this was for a weekly column for X £100 a week. And they came back and said, we do understand, but how about if it was a fortnightly column for X times 200? So they were offering to double the money and halve the workload. And at that point I thought, what I really need when I'm having negotiations is some sense of how much money is actually on the table. So when a boss says to you, I'm afraid we've got a pay freeze on pay rises this year, which is well below inflation, and you think, well, that's the opening gambit, isn't it? But what is the actual truth? What is the point at which your boss's 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 boss would say, all right, that is as far as we can go? So I'm trying to make this personal because I find it very helpful to imagine things in the micro when we're trying to understand the macro. The line there being, known to one side of the negotiating table but not known to the other. I'd love to be able to say, to sort of just put your hand across the table and say, look, pay me, 10% less than the absolute maximum you can get away with paying me, because then your boss will be happy that you've kept it below the absolute maximum, and I'll be happy that it's well above the original offer. But if you're doing HS2, the idea that you can't reveal how much of the budget, how much the total budget is, makes perfect sense when you think about it, because what it means is that all the contractors, they've all got dollar signs in their eyes. Right, I'm going for the Hanna-Barbera depiction of cartoon characters. I suppose they could also be pound signs or euros, but they've all got pound signs in their eyes. You turn up to pitch for work on a project that you know's got a budget of several squillion pounds. You are not going to be coming in with your best possible offer, are you? You're going to be coming in with pound signs in your eyes. And I found that simple observation, which seemed almost counterintuitive at first, but it involves the government hobbling itself. So the government wants to announce a massive infrastructure project because the government's like nothing more than announcing what they're doing with our money. So they make a massive announcement, and they can't make a massive announcement without a massive number. So you need a massive number. The more massive the number, the more massive the announcement. If they just said, we're going to build a new railway line, carry on, good luck, what's for tea? Then we wouldn't all be going, oh my goodness me, tens of billions of pounds. We got the same thing with Crossrail, didn't we? That was massively over budget as well. But they announced the budget at the beginning. I'm not suggesting that would solve all of the problems. I don't know that they ever announced a budget for Boris Johnson's bonkers bridge, and that ended up costing us 50 million quid without a single spade being put in the ground, as Rishi Sunak's very fond of saying this week. Spades are in the ground. So I don't know, but I do know this. It is a disaster. Whether or not Rishi Sunak's decision to cancel it or not is the right decision, it is a disaster. If he is cutting his losses and refusing to throw good money after bad, then that would be the right decision, wouldn't it? In a sense, that would be the right decision. But it is still a disaster. Is sort of calling time upon a disaster doesn't render the disaster a non-disaster. Spending this level of cash, it was Gordon Brown, by the way, who announced £20 billion in 2009. And from that point onwards, everybody involved in HS2 is thinking, I'll have myself a little bit of that sweet, sweet cash. I'll have myself a little bit of that sweet, sweet £20 billion. That just multiplies. It's like a domino effect, and leading to the disaster of having spent way more money than it was supposed to cost and ending up with less than we were supposed to get. I'll say that again. Despite the fact that Gordon Brown blew the whistle on it in 2009, everything from that point onwards is on the Tories. And, of course, for 5 years, I suppose, the coalition, it was May 2010, brand new government committed to developing it as part of a programme to create a low-carbon economy. 2012, Transport Secretary Justine Greening gives the green light to HS2. There it is. Costs have risen to £32.7 billion, despite the fact we've only got a Y-shaped network from London to Birmingham, partly because Tory constituencies in the Chilterns insisted on tunnels. So one of the reasons why the budget has gone up is NIMBYism in Tory constituencies, which are quite possibly going to vote Liberal Democrat at the next general election anyway, so that is wasted money on two counts. And on it goes. June 2013, government admits it's actually going to cost £50 billion and will begin in 2026, but not be completed until 2033. November 2015, it's up to 55.7 but this is like play your cards right with Bruce Forsyth, God rest his soul, isn't it? £55.7 billion. The government claims that every pound invested in HS2 will deliver benefits worth more than £2.50 to the UK economy. That was in 2015 when the Tories were in power. Rishi Sunak is poised tomorrow to tear up that claim, that pledge, that promise. 2016, National Audit Office warns that it's under financial strain and could be a year late. 2016, the Eastern Leg is published and includes plans for the trains to cut right through a brand new housing estate in Mexborough up near Doncaster. It later emerges that's because the engineers had been using old maps. Did you know that? Has that ever happened to you? It doesn't happen very often in these days of sat-nav, does it? In these days of Google Maps. But even with sat-navs, you had to buy the updates. If you didn't buy I once got taken by surprise by a ring road. I'm not a big driver, but I was using sat-nav in the old Volvo, and I was tootling happily down a road that was supposed to be quite quiet, and suddenly I came across an enormous roundabout that wasn't on the map. I got quite scared. Yeah, now it updates constantly. You download updates, don't you? So I'm driving down the road and I'm thinking, oh, this is I like quiet roads. I might see some wildlife. Oh, my days. There's an enormous dual carriageway and a giant-sized roundabout in front of me. It's literally not on the map. So I'm panicking now. I'm looking at the map on the screen. I'm looking at the road ahead. It's a bloody great roundabout. I don't even know where to go because the road I'm on, it could be any one of the two other exits coming off the roundabout that has suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Well, I'm an idiot with a car. These guys are engineers with a £50 billion budget, and they managed to plot the rails because they were using old maps that didn't contain a housing estate that had recently been built. I'm sure it is somehow Diane Abbott's fault. In July 2017, HS2 Limited accepted it had made a serious error in making £1.8 million of unauthorised redundancy payments to staff, and on it goes. And on it goes. September 2019, it may not be completed until 2040, says the chairman, and it could cost up to £88 billion. So we've gone from 32.7, well, actually, we've gone from 20 when Gordon Brown announced it, but then he quickly shuffled off the political stage. We've gone from 20 in 2009 to 88 billion in September 2019. Wait for it. Higher or lower? Lower, higher. Because 4 months later in January 2020, the cost estimates for completing all three phases had risen to £98 billion. And that, of course, is before inflation kicks in. So those are 2019 values and 2019 prices. And on we go. Boris Johnson in February 2020 pledges to keep building it despite costs hitting £106 billion. 3 months after that, it's admitted that it's gone back. I mean, I'd be here all day. I'd fast forward to September 2023, or last month, as we also call it. And you have a photographer outside the Treasury doing one of those pictures of documents, and it appears that Sunak and Jeremy Hunt are talking about the possible scrapping of the Western Spur, as it's called, up to Manchester. Various reputable journalists reported yesterday, Robert Peston through to Sky News, that it had been confirmed to them that he is definitely axing it and probably announcing it tomorrow. What an almighty mess. If he is cancelling it, which I think is about 80 to 90% certain, it doesn't stop it being a disaster, but it stops it being his disaster. If he's making the wrong decision, he has taken a disaster and polished a disaster to a high new level of burnish. He has turned a disaster into an uber disaster, a mega disaster, an even bigger disaster. And I think, and I speak as someone raised in the Midlands and educated in the North, I speak as someone who really does see this as a middle finger raised to the north of England. And don't take my word for it. The Conservative Mayor of Birmingham yesterday was speaking in similar terms. Businesses have explained time and time again that they make big long-term decisions based upon stability and consistency. If you tell me there's going to be a whopping great rail link between Manchester and Birmingham, then the likelihood of me building something increases, or the likelihood of me planning to build something increases. And then up comes little Rishi Sunak and apparently calls the whole thing off. Who does this delight? I do not really know. 0345 6060973. Claims of fiscal responsibility somewhat undermined by decisions not to further investigate PPE fraud. Funny that they'll go after benefits claimants, apparently fraudulent benefits claimants who make up a pitiful pittance in the context of the national budget, but they make a conscious decision not to look further into PPE fraud, which was arguably undertaken by them and their mates in cahoots with their friends in business, arguably. So there it is. It is now October 2023. Sunak is preparing to confirm that he's scrapping the northern leg to Manchester. Now, the problem we have here is actually a shortage of knowledge, a shortage of proper knowledge. I cannot say to you, and I think I've established my credentials as a critic of this government. I look forward to establishing my credentials as a critic of the next government. But as things stand, they've had 13 years to preside over this, and they appear to have mucked it up in every imaginable way. But I don't know whether or not Rishi Sunak's decision is the right one or the wrong one. And I don't know that there is even a definitive answer to that question, which is why I'm asking you. 0345 6060 973. Tens of billions of pounds over budget, decades late, disastrously mismanaged, appallingly overseen, political abnegation on the kind of scale that you don't expect to see in a civilised country, costs that are greater than costs in comparable countries like France by a factor of about 10, and then calling time on the whole thing because what? It's going to cost too much? What's happened to the claim that every pound spent will deliver economic benefits worth more than £2.50? I do not know. What's happened to the carbon pledge, the low carbon economy? I do not know. Do you? 0345 6060 973. And talk to me about Wales as well, because again, it is easy to overlook different angles. It's supposed to be an England and Wales project, meaning that Wales doesn't get alternative funding for its own railway, Lear tells me. And that means not a single mile or metre of track will be put down in Wales. And now they're potentially cutting the nearest part of it. So Wales to Manchester, potentially, or certainly North Wales to Manchester, quite an easy hop. And then Manchester to London in minutes, but no. Manchester to Birmingham in minutes, but no. So 19 after 10. What do you think? What do you think of the politics and the policy and the rest of it? 0345 6060 973. It's 19 minutes after 10. And no, I didn't realise I had quite so much to say about HS2, but, every day's a school day.
James O'Brien on LBC. James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 10:23. I'd like, if I may, also to introduce Andy Burnham's comments yesterday into proceedings. Andy Burnham talking to our political editor, Natasha Clark. I forget his precise language. But he described it as yet... No, I don't. I remember his precise language. He described it as yet more evidence that people in the north of England are second-class citizens in the eyes of this government. If you don't know much about HS2, but you're not getting it now in the northwest, do you agree with Andy Burnham? Does it feel like that? One day we'll have a conversation about how you can simultaneously be second-class citizens in the eyes of Tory politicians and deliver red wall seats in the 2019 election. But I think I know some of the answers to that question already. Second-class citizens, does this add to Andy Burnham? So you've got two mayors, the mayor of Birmingham and the mayor of Manchester, one Tory, one Labour, united in their condemnation of the imminent announcement that the HS2, the high-speed rail link between England's second and third cities, is not going to happen. Paul is in the second one, the third one actually, but I was sucking up to him. Manchester. Paul, what would you like to say?
Yeah, we're actually the first city.
Yeah, of course you are, mate. Everyone in Liverpool agrees.
Absolutely. It's all right. I'll put the cards on the table. I actually used to live in Japan, so the comparisons with France is not quite accurate because, as a country, it's a lot flatter than here. They have space for high-speed rail. Japan, as a population, is twice the size of us. The country is twice the size. So, in terms of density, it's actually higher than us because they've got more mountains.
Okay.
So, but they still managed to fit a high-speed rail line in. So do the South Koreans. And when people say, "Oh, we're small," it's like, "Well, South Korea's even tinier."
Yes.
They have one. So does Taiwan. So the idea that only big countries could use it is ridiculous.
Yes.
But the whole thing about high-speed rail isn't just moving people fast. The problem with high-speed rail is that what you're doing is taking the express services off regular lines where they block up loads of space, so then you can fill that space with local services and freight trains.
Yes.
The town I used to live in, we had 3 major factories. One of which, big claim to fame, which nobody cares about, is that it produces about 70% of the world's piston rings. Okay. Not once did I see any kind of heavy trucks driving through for that factory. It was all small trucks delivering a container to a freight yard at the local train station, because there's about 8 freight trains a day passing through. Gosh. Because there's no high-speed services. None whatsoever. I mean, the local bullet train station from me was about 40 minutes up the road by train.
But this is incomparable, though, isn't it? I mean, the difference. I hadn't even thought of that as being a factor, because you think the way you described it. Then I'm thinking of the local links being populated by old ladies going shopping, but they can be infrastructure as well. They can be absolutely integral to commerce as well.
Yeah. I mean, as you say, because we wouldn't need massive freight yards because it
wouldn't be sitting there idly. It would be. It would contribute to more of a just-in-time, which we all got a crash course in during the aftermath of Brexit. It would be more of a just-in-time distribution system.
Yeah, I mean, where I used to live, which is a small village south of Manchester, used to have a freight siding.
Gosh.
it doesn't anymore. It's now a retirement home.
Well, I mean, there is, of course, the point we don't do much manufacturing anymore. Where and in Japan they still do. So there are, there are differences. But listen, I think up until about 2 months ago, I'd have said, well, Rishi Sunak clearly isn't stupid. But that partly, I think, hinges on the idea that you must somehow be intelligent if you've made a lot of money. And I think that's probably quite a dangerous presumption. He's certainly not badly educated. If it's as clear as you think it is, how come he can't see it?
I think the problem is because he lives in. All right, fine. I'm going to make accusations which are completely have no
just
evidence
specific to HS2.
whatsoever.
You're not going to get me sued or anything. You're not going to accuse him of appalling sort of satanic acts. Given
that he seems to hop around the country on helicopters and aeroplanes,
this is very true.
I'm guessing he doesn't have a great deal of experience with railways.
I think that's valid.
The problem is with our network, you've got local services which will stop everywhere. You've got, certainly in the north, you've got the TransPennine services, which doesn't stop everywhere, but it's, in terms of speed, is not that much faster.
No.
In terms of how quickly the trains will travel. You've got freight trains, and then you've also got the Avanti West Coast stuff, or on the other side of the country, you've got LNER. But those dominate the tracks because they have to be given the room because they're the fast, shiny express services. So everything else has to kind of jump out the way.
Which adds to their problems and delays and all the rest. It's a neat encapsulation. I like the Japanese comparison. Okay, so in terms of, and I like the explanation of how he's managed to get it so wrong in your view. I don't think that gets filed under accusation. I think that's pretty close to explanation. But in political terms, why has he done it? Because it looks to me as if it is not going to be very popular. I could be wrong. We'll find out. We'll get our own anecdotal evidence on that today on the phones. But
it's something you mentioned before about how we have the red wall seats being delivered to the Tories by Johnson.
Yeah.
Of course, he made lots of pie-in-the-sky promises to the
completely
North,
unkeepable
not
promises.
just about Brexit
everything.
but other things like high-speed rail. So everybody kind of went, "Ooh, hope and optimism for the future."
Yes.
The only problem is as you was kind of alluding to before, half the reason why, probably a major reason why we have tunnels being put everywhere is because a lot of the constituencies down south wanted tunnels because they don't want their scenery being spoiled.
Yeah, so they've spent money on that, which they now mean. So, I mean, talk about second-class citizens.
Running out of money.
We've run out of money because we've put all the lines underground in the parts of the country where we think we've got more votes.
Yes.
And now we can't have any lines at all in the parts of the country where we don't think we've got votes.
Yeah, and and the problem is, throughout the whole HS2 debate, it has been very badly managed. Cause,
clearly.
I think it was LBC. I can't remember if it was you or one of your colleagues.
Or a dream. There's always a chance that it's a dream. Don't forget, it could be a dream.
It was either yourself or one of your colleagues did actually have somebody on from the rail industry and who basically said it's all about capacity for other services.
Yeah. And that's still not being communicated. Still not being communicated. And it hasn't been even acknowledged by Sunak, which means, listen, I've got to go to the news, mate. I sense we could carry on all day, but there it is. So it looks like a duck, and it quacks like it walks like a duck, and it quacks like a duck. Maybe it's not a duck. What is Sunak? What's the win here for Sunak? 0345 606 0973. What is the win, and what is your view of this decision? Because that idea there, we can't afford it now because we spent all the money putting the lines under the ground in the southeast. So we can't afford to build it in the northwest. And that is something that an even half-competent Labour Party should be able to use to dismantle the red wall forever. 10:30 is the time. Thomas Watts has your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC. James O'Brien on LBC.
10:33 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where the HS2 question, Faisal Islam, who's an excellent journalist, economics editor over at the BBC, offers up some very challenging evidence of just Sunak talking gibberish when he keeps banging on about UK cities being over-prioritised at the expense of its towns. He shares a graph which shows exactly where Manchester and Birmingham sit in the context of productivity compared to other European cities and, of course, compared to London. It's not pretty, but he also suggests, in answer to the riddle of why on earth Rishi Sunak has allowed himself to be boxed into announcing this in Manchester, it's possible he will simultaneously announce that they will build the sort of HS2 line from Manchester Airport into Manchester, which would become like a sort of, which is the really good one, the Gatwick Express or the Heathrow Express. I get the tube to Heathrow, so I always, but anyway, so it would be like a Gatwick Express for Manchester, which, you know, that would be great, but nothing like as good as having really, really quick links to the rest of the country. So I come to work on public transport every day, not reluctantly, to be honest with you. I used to get a fancy schmancy car into work every day, but Greta Thunberg came along and inspired my children to insist that I stop doing so. I suppose I could get an electric one in, couldn't I? But I quite like it now because I can read on the tube. I can't read in the car. But I get a bus and a tube most days. Just a bus to the station. And I actually had a bad morning today. I got in quite late enough for my producer to send me a text at 9 o'clock asking if everything was okay. I can be in on a really good day, I can be in by shortly after 8 o'clock. But today was one of those days where I got to the bus stop and we have digital boards near me. I know they're not everywhere, but you know what I mean. And it says, you know, the 299 will be here in 10 minutes. I got there and it was one of the worst. I had a 10-minute wait for a bus, which is longer than it is even supposed to be on the timetable. It's supposed to be 8 minutes, every 8 minutes. And on a good day, you can get 2 in 2 minutes. You know what they say, don't you? You must have heard this figure of speech. You wait ages for a bus and then 2 come along at once. And then the bus came and I got on it and I got to the tube station and it was an 8-minute wait for a tube. And it came in and it was absolutely ram-packed. So the train I hop on has come from Heathrow. And some days you just can't, I mean, it's horrible. And so I'm looking at the next one's in 4 minutes. 4 minutes is about my limit for waiting for the next one. So I waited for the next one, which means that's a 12-minute wait since I got to the tube station to get onto a train, which was also crowded, but wasn't completely crowded. Some days I get a seat, some days I don't. And I did find myself thinking, what's it like in other big cities? London, one of the best, well, the best and one of the biggest cities in the world. And I'm coming in from a suburb, but not the boondocks, you know, and that is a 20-minute variation between a good day and a bad day on how long it's going to take me to get to work. It surely should be better than that. I'm not suggesting I should walk out of my house, step onto a bus, step off the bus, step onto a train, although, my goodness me, that sets you up for the day. Have you travelled by public transport in such vicarious circumstances as I do? There's something about it's like a fruit machine. It's like 3 melons coming up on a fruit. So you walk out of the house, you see, some days I get to the corner and the bus is at the other corner and I know that I can walk at my normal pace and the bus will come up the road as I walk down the road. The bus will pull up at the bus stop because you've got to be sure there's someone there to hail it. There's nothing worse. But anyway, I digress slightly. And I don't have to increase my pace at all. And I can walk and just keep walking. And the bus doors open and the 2 people at the bus stop get on. And I will just slide in behind one of them without changing my pace at all. And I'm on the bus. And then you get off the bus and you walk and you go through the barrier at the station. You go down, you're at the top of the stairs and you see the train just coming in on the horizon. So you don't increase your pace at all. You walk down the stairs and you don't get on the first door. You keep walking at your normal pace because you know you do it every day. You know exactly where the train's going to stop. You get to the door you like to get on because it leaves you opposite the exit when you get to the other end. The door's open and you haven't changed your pace at all and you step onto the train. That happens 3 times a year. I've just given away the fact that I keep count, haven't I? Yeah, I keep count, and I don't care who knows it. That happened in the last year or so. That has happened 3 times, and it's been close on other occasions. I've had to hurry up a bit, but 3 times I've literally not changed my pace from leaving the front door of my home to getting off the train at Leicester Square, and it is something like a planets aligning moment, like 3 melons coming up on a celestial fruit machine. It just sets you up for the day in such a whatever is the opposite of discombobulated. Everyone's going to text me combobulated now. Rarely do I feel more combobulated than when my public transport choices align in such a magnificent fashion. It feels good. It feels good. Why does it happen so rarely? I don't know. But I mention it because on a meta level, on a national level, knowing that you can get around the country really quickly and easily is so obviously for the public good that I need you to tell me why a Prime Minister would elect to reverse plans to introduce it. 10:38 is the time. Mike's in Oldham. Mike, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. First time caller.
Welcome.
Well, first of all, James, if they don't build it, it'll be the most expensive branch line in the history of the world.
Yes.
and make this country a laughing stock.
Well, we're arguably that we're already a bit of a laughing stock, aren't we, Mike?
Well, we are really, yeah. And I think the reason he's done it, he wants the money for tax cuts for his rich friends.
Do you think it's that simple? Do you think it's that? He frees up about £5 billion. I don't know how far that goes in the context of tax cuts, but at least unlike Liz Truss, he'd be able to say they are funded. Yeah,
well, I think it's one of the reasons. And also, it's a typical Tory thing, the price of everything, the value of nothing. You know,
it could be that simple.
They don't give a toss about the north of England.
Well, does that come through to you? Because I heard Andy Burnham say that yesterday, and I found myself thinking, do you know what? I don't know how you can spin this. This has been particularly when you bring the tunnels into it, Mike. So if you live in the Chilterns, they've stuck them all through underground to improve the view, and you're not getting any of it.
Exactly. But the thing is, there was another route for this.
Go on.
I know this was hindsight by a chap called Mark Bostock. I only read about it last week.
Okay.
It was the original route that would have avoided the Chilterns, gone up the contours of the motorway, cost a damn sight less, but you'd have had to bring the speed down to 185 miles an hour, which is quite adequate.
Well, yeah, but then it's not high speed. It's not as high. So there's all sorts of decisions or things they could have done differently.
Oh, yeah, but we are where we are.
We are where we are, Mike. We are where we are. I sense that you were unlikely to vote for this lot anyway at the next...
There's another piece of infrastructure that they scrapped in Manchester.
What's that?
And I'm surprised Andy never mentioned that. But you're familiar with Manchester?
Yeah, I am quite familiar with Manchester,
yeah. They built a thing called the Odsal Cord, the bridge, linking Victoria and Piccadilly. And we're supposed to spend £1 billion with 2 new platforms at Piccadilly. And
they've not done that?
They've not done it. He scrapped it last year.
I wasn't across that. I should have been. Are you a Latics fan?
No, United.
Right.
Every time I see Latics, they lose.
They beat us last year. They beat us on Tuesday night somehow. Yeah, I don't think they deserved it, to be honest with you, Michael. But it's becoming a familiar experience for Kidderminster this season.
Kidderminster, right.
I never thought Oldham and Kidderminster would be in the same league, and I don't think anyone in Oldham did either.
One of the points is the bloke who cancelled the... It's called the Castlefield Corridor.
Yes.
It was failing Grayling. Or say no more,
Well, you say no more. You could almost be nostalgic for Chris Grayling's tenure in charge of transport in this country, such as is the current mess. Who was talking about the 15-minute cities on stage? Was it Mark Harper, the current Transport Secretary, literally indulging in borderline QAnon conspiracy theories on stage at the party conference of the governing party in the United Kingdom? Even Chris Grayling, the man who gave a contract to a shipping company with no ships, even Chris Grayling wouldn't have done that. Well, who knows? We may be talking about that a little later in the programme. I appreciate that my commuting experience was both fascinating and unrepresentative of people outside big cities. Aldo, for example, says, in Zimbabwe, James, if I miss the first bus, I can wait 4 days for the next one, so you probably shouldn't be complaining about 12 minutes. And somewhat closer to home, someone tells me, not a whole 12-minute walk, you should try living in Norwich, where the buses seem to just not arrive at all, even when they're only due once an hour. Look, I know, all right? When I grew up in Worcestershire, there was one bus to Bridgnorth, one a week. Literally one a week. I don't know whether that's a throwback to markets, or I do know but I don't. I live in London. I'm pointing out that if you can't even glide smoothly to and from work in the places where it's best, then robbing from the places where it's not best is a particularly politically stupid thing to do, in my humble opinion. Steve's in Stoke-on-Trent. Steve, what do you think?
Good morning, James.
Hello,
time
Steve.
I've been on here.
You're very welcome.
First of all, I've got a few points. First point is...
You've got 2 minutes. I'm warning you now, but carry on. Fill your boots. I'll be quiet.
All right. I'm not a Tory, but for once I agree with the government on this.
Good.
It's too expensive a project. It's become a white elephant over the years because of the cost. I may be wrong, but I believe the government has never published a business case that it had commissioned for this project, perhaps because it doesn't stack up.
I thought it had. I mean, it's generally business that have been speaking out in favour of it and against the decision to close it. Why do you think that? Why do you think that? Okay, go on.
The money could be.
No. The question needs to be why a business condemning it if it isn't of benefit to them, as you say.
But surely the money could be better spent on the rest of the network. We often hear of the Mayor of Manchester and others.
But I'm sorry, Steve. I'd have to push you. Why a business condemning it if it isn't a bad decision?
Well, I'm not convinced that
No.
it is a bad decision.
No, I know
afraid.
you're
There
not,
are
but
large
that's why I
chunks of
keep
the
asking you the same
country with
question.
No investment.
No, okay, let's not worry about that then. Go on,
Well,
give me your other
let me
points.
make my points,
Yes,
please?
absolutely, and I fully
All right.
apologise for asking you to justify the points you've already made. I'll be quiet now.
Yeah. Oh, no. I live just south of the line from in the north.
Yes.
And we've got Crewe, Stoke, Derby, Nottingham, Lincoln. 3 big cities there. We don't get the investment. We are 30 miles south.
Yes.
The West Coast Main Line, as it is, large chunks of it do 125 miles an hour. What are you going to do with a few minutes extra in your life?
Yes.
My house backs onto the West Coast Main Line,
Right.
on the most direct line to Manchester, and there are not that many trains on it,
No.
to tell you the truth.
Well, exactly.
The internet surely has had a major impact on meetings.
Yeah.
I retired in November and regularly used to go to London. Then it kind of stopped because they were all done, meetings were done via the internet,
Yes.
which was a great boon.
Indeed.
Capacity, the current system is a Victorian railway, but with pretty much 125 mile an hour trains, 110 mile an hour trains, and your freight trains. Far better to invest in that than in this.
Okay.
We've got going to Birmingham, great.
I am going to
Manchester,
run out
what's
of
the
time.
business case?
I am running out of time, so I am going to
Yeah.
ask you, with permission, if I may, why do you think that the business community is so disapproving of this decision when, under your expert analysis, it should actually be welcoming it?
Well, obviously, it would be good if it went there. But it's the opportunity cost of it. You can spend billions going to Manchester, and
Yes, but
billions
for the
going elsewhere.
final time, why do you think the business community is close to united in condemning it, including, of course, the Andy Street, who used to run John Lewis, and his Labour counterpart in Manchester? So we're bringing 2 political leaders as well from completely different parties. Why are they all united in condemning it when they should obviously, as you've just explained, be cheering it to the rafters?
It will be, don't get me wrong, it will be an engine of growth for up there, but all I'm saying is, why not put the money across the network so you've got engines of growth across the country?
So
That's
it's a
all.
white elephant, but an engine of growth at the same time.
No, all right. Yeah, you took my word there, and you were right there.
Well,
But
that's why it's important. That's why it's important to let me interrupt you.
Nottingham.
Yes, I know. I heard what you said, and you also now have heard what you said. And on we go. It's 10:46.
James O'Brien on LBC. James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 10:50, and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I mean, all suggestions are equal in our brave new world, aren't they? So it could all be designed. A couple of you have suggested simply to scupper the next government. I don't think Rishi Sunak has admitted defeat. I've got to be honest with you. I don't know if you can. Who would be the incumbent Prime Minister? I mean, John Major was right until the last minute, wasn't he? In whatever his final election was, 92. Has there ever been an election in our lifetime where they kind of knew that they were going to lose? I guess it would be John Major in 97, wouldn't it? Really? I guess there was that writing was on the wall, but I don't think they ever gave up. And I think Sunak still dreams of pulling it out of the bag. And therefore, I don't think that they do anything yet with the plan of completely scuppering a future Labour administration. But I could be wrong. It's certainly a theory. 0345 606 0973 is the number you need to share yours. It just looks mad. The notion of calling time on something before it's actually done what it said on the tin. But maybe we're missing something. Jed's in Salford. A very northwest heavy show today, which is very gratifying. Jed, what would you like to say?
James, thanks for having me on.
You're welcome.
Yeah, everybody keeps going on about, I think the main thing that they say is, why do we have to get down to London half an hour quicker? It's all about people. People keep saying it's people getting down there quicker. It's freight as well. It's goods.
It's capacity. It's capacity. It's not the speed of the journey. Of course, I know that, but you can only say it so many times, Jed, can't I?
I know, exactly, I know. What happens to the track that we do now that runs between, Piccadilly and Manchester all the way to Euston? That's not going to get ripped up and thrown away. It's going to be used as well for freight.
And the track at the end of Friend Stephen's garden, that's going to be used as well for freight. So there'll be fewer big lorries on the road, and the arteries of the country will be unclogged as if it were triple bypass heart surgery, Jed.
I know, and this is so much of this gets missed because they keep harping on. Mark Harper. Anyway, they keep harping on.
Behave.
About.
You're making me go grayling.
Sorry about getting down there quick, faster. Yeah, it's great to get down there faster. Absolutely brilliant. But we need to join these cities together. We need to join the north and the south. It's ridiculous. It's lasted for too long. We've had the chance to actually do it, to do a once-in-a-generation project, and they've messed it up. Who's been in charge of it? Who's been overseeing it? They get the figures every month.
Why they do?
What's happened?
Why have they done it then? Why is he? Why? I mean, there's always a slim chance he won't, but I will blame that entirely upon Robert Peston and other people if it turns out that it's not true. But why, presuming that he is doing it, why is he doing it?
I think he's doing it because we're absolutely skint.
Yeah.
Do you know when we left a letter to Labour was supposed to have left a letter in the drawer and all the rest of it, which they did as a gentleman, one gentleman leaving to another gentleman coming in type of thing, as a little in-joke.
It's a tradition.
But they've weaponised it. It was a tradition, exactly, that's it. But they turned it around. We're not only have we got no money left, we're up to our eyes in hock, and mainly due to a mistrust from last year.
Well, that didn't help. I don't know what when the dust settles, if it ever settles, how big a hole that leaves in public finances. But the idea. So then you don't, because there's a suggestion here from from Mark in Tooting. I don't know how he's done his sums, but he's a reliable old cove at the best of times. Good morning, James. The cost of a 1 penny cut in the basic rate of income tax would cost the government £5.3 billion. So that could be, they could be, robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Well, we've got the highest tax in 75 years.
But still not that high compared to...
that can't find these WhatsApp messages.
Oh, I like this.
Unbelievable.
You should come to our production meetings. They were all contenders for conversations today. That WhatsApp thing we might do as a side order. We might have that as a side dish, like a sort of onion rings of radio chat. I will find out a little later in the programme. I don't know if you've seen that story. It's known in the trade as doing a Johnson. Oh, I'm terribly sorry. I haven't got those WhatsApp messages you want to see. Massively important national inquiry. I have inadvertently mislaid them. Ooh. Thank you, Jed. Peter's on the Wirral. Peter, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Yeah. I was just saying to your producer, I think this may be a political move or tactic by the Conservative Party to get all for order about cancelling the HS2 over and done with now, so that in 6, 8, 9 months' time, when we have a general election, it's in the past. It's a done deal. So it won't be able to matter. Personally, in my personal things, I think in the North, we need to stand together. We need to get this done for the North. We've lagged behind for so long now, and it's. I know it's over budget, and I know all of that, and that's incompetence on their side. I realise that, but so is the Channel Tunnel. Look at the benefits the Channel Tunnel gave to business in this country. Huge, huge benefits to it. And the same thing, I think, will happen if they can carry on going, as Andy Burnham says. Keep it going, get that infrastructure in, get the connectivity. It will help us. However, it's a personal belief. I think the Conservative Party machine absolutely don't care whether it goes forward or not.
Well, he's coming. You say that he's coming under attack from people that he would usually be expecting support from. Andy Street, I won't let HS2 go without a fight. Priti Patel suggesting that he should look at reducing costs rather than scrapping it. That these are, you could loosely describe them. Well, in the case of Priti Patel, it's a remarkable thing to have to say, mate. But these are Tory grandees now. These are the Heseltines of the future, and they're opposed to it. So who does it appeal to? Who thinks yes, good work?
Well,
because I don't know,
James. I personally, and I'm 70 odd years old now. I've watched the Conservative Party for a number of years. I believe the Conservative Party don't really care. The Conservative Party is the important thing, and Priti Patel and the other people this is about leadership of the Conservative Party going forward.
I don't see anyone cheering. That's the weird thing. Maybe I'm looking in the wrong places. And Stephen in Stoke notwithstanding. Although even he conceded it would be an engine of growth after dismissing it as a white elephant. It can't obviously be both, but and also 5 billion quid on an overall spend of 100 billion quid, even if it was supposed to be 30 billion quid. You'd sort of, at risk of sounding like a victim of a scam, you are actually going to get it at the end of the tunnel. Pardon the pun. It's not a non-existent project like a lot of the things the Tories are also promising at this conference. Thank you, Peter. Last word on this, and it'll have to be brief, to Barry and Hayes, back down south. Barry, what would you like to say?
Well, the Tories need congratulating because they've accidentally, by terminating at Old Oak Common, levelled up Notting Hill Carnival.
You're being a little bit facetious. I hate to break it to you because it spoils your joke. But I think that the Euston bit is back on the table.
The thing is, at the end of the day, it's just a mess. And
yes,
the thing is, it should have been a water supply transfer line, not a train. Times have changed. The big companies, logistics, insurance companies, even the BBC have all left London due to the cost for their staff. We have the joke that basically you can't work in London anymore if you're actual proper working class, building trade, delivery.
You can't live in you live on the fringes. The BBC haven't, just to be fair. They've opened Salford, but Broadcasting House is absolutely throbbing with humanity. And I know they've shut down White City, but it's not strictly true to say that.
The logistics of, I work in the building trade. I live in Camden. I'm moving out to Bushy. And the reason being, I save £1,000 a year in parking permits alone.
Can't argue with that. And your property will be a lot cheaper as well, presumably.
Everything's cheaper. No ULEZ zone. I'm outside the ULEZ. Yeah. That's another charge gone. I can go.
It's only a charge if you've got a non-compliant car.
You get hit by the parking if you've got a compliant car.
No, we're talking about ULEZ. You're not paying any ULEZ charges if you've got a compliant vehicle. Come on, you know how this show works, Barry.
You are via the councils on their parking because they hit you for a surcharge on your parking every time you park or go somewhere. With the new clean living zones,
but that's not ULEZ though, is it? That's parking.
No, that's just they found another way to do it, the clean living zone's the ultimate evolution of it.
All right.
Where you have to. So, it's just, I'm coming out of London. I've lived here for most of my life, and you can't work here as a small businessman anymore. The works, the costs for the tenants, even the poor tenants I visit can't afford the charges of.
What phoning are you contributing to at the moment?
What am I? Sorry, come again?
What phoning are you contributing to at the moment?
The HS2 one, I suppose. It's like,
so what's you moving to Bushy got to do with Rishi Sunak closing the Birmingham to Manchester HS2 link?
The thing is, one of my friends has an actual
I'm going to make you answer this question, Barry.
Okay. The direct effect...
the answer is absolutely nothing, James. I apologise for wasting your time. And I can't quite believe I've managed to bring ULEZ into it either. So I'll ask you again, what has you moving to Bushy got to do with the closure of the Manchester to Birmingham HS2 link?
I have family in Manchester.
That's not an answer to my question. That's random. That's random extra information. I've got family in Kidderminster.
It's going to be the longest replacement bus service ever.
Now you're back to the jokes. Okay, I demand an answer to my question. What has your mooted move to Bushy got to do with Rishi Sunak's imminent announcement?
I'm just saying. It's just like everything in London is a mess now.
You keep saying that, and yet if it's capable of generating all the money that you've just described, they must be doing something right. And if you look at the graph, sad though it is that people have to move out of their childhood haunts. Obviously, no one's going to be celebrating that. But some of what you say, much of what you say, is just categorically untrue. The whole idea is to make what you should have said is that HS2 would have made other cities more competitive with London, which means that the what did Stephen in Stoke call it? The engine would become much bigger. So you wouldn't have London out on its own as a generator of wealth, out on its own as a commercial hub, out on its own as an economic powerhouse. You would be able to spread that around the country a little more, which might, and it's a very big might, it might bring down some of the costs in London. That's what I would have said if I'd asked me that question. 2 minutes after 11 is the time.
James O'Brien on LBC. James O'Brien on LBC.
5 minutes after 11 is the time. So we're back in that space again where a conspiracy theory has gathered so much momentum that those of us who don't normally give the time of day to conspiracy theories find ourselves thinking we probably have to talk about this one. It happened with anti-vax. It took me a while to find the right way into anti-vax lies, which really were proliferating and continue to do so on Twitter. And we found the right way into it was to speak to people who still loved people who'd gone down the rabbit hole, even if they'd been excised from their lives or unfollowed on Facebook. And we even spoke to people whose partners, they were still living together. I mean, don't forget, during lockdown, whose partners had just gone off the deep end on it. And that allowed us to examine the problem and examine the issue from a perspective that didn't give oxygen to the actual nonsense. And, of course, people who'd come out the other end of it and could look back upon the nonsense that they'd swallowed were able to give us a better understanding of how easy it is to swallow that nonsense. And probably the biggest factor in it would be, on an objective level, would be algorithms, the way that once you had a little nibble of a conspiracy theory, YouTube and other platforms would just bombard you with more and more and more of it until you were consuming an almost unleavened diet of conspiracy. And also a validation. That was the bit that I think is harder to pin down, and bigger minds than mine have wrestled with the issue. This sense of belonging, this affirming sense of understanding things that other people don't understand. There's a wonderful cartoon that sums it up best. It's a fella at his computer looking over his shoulder and saying to his wife, darling, come here. I've just discovered something on the internet that all the finest scientists in the world have completely missed. And that's when the conspiracy actually gets enforced, because then you have to say, oh, well, of course, all the scientists are liars, or all the scientists are part of the conspiracy, or all the scientists are in the pay of the World Economic Forum or George Soros, and on it goes, and on it goes, and on it goes. And it was when preparing to interview Naomi Klein for her new book, Doppelganger, which looks into a hell of a lot of this. It was when I was doing that I realised how night follows day on these sort of issues, and particularly on so-called 15-minute cities, which we have to talk about now because the Transport Secretary has been endorsing the conspiracy theories live on the Conservative Party conference stage in Manchester. Not the existence of a plan to introduce so-called 15-minute cities, which is about as close to innocuous as it's possible to imagine, but the lies about councils planning to confine you to your own home or limit you from leaving a tiny radius around your own home. That's the conspiracy, if that needs to be explained. But if you look at elements of it, this notion of being forced to stay in your own home, population control, and being forced to stay in your own home are key constituents of the conspiracy theory element of this conversation. And if you think about it, they follow inevitably from COVID-19 conspiracies. People who thought the lockdown was introduced for reasons other than believing that it would help spread the COVID-19 virus. You know, whether history decides that it was the best available policy or not is immaterial. The conspiracy theory is that they deliberately did it not to protect us from spreading the COVID-19 virus among each other, but to confine us to our own homes, to control the population. And of course, then you get the question of, well, why did they ever let us out again? Which they can't answer, because they've already moved on to the next evidence of their conspiracy, which in this case is so-called 15-minute cities are designed to control the population and trap us in our own homes. It's the same Telegram channels that did all the work around COVID-19 or even the war in Ukraine that are constantly spreading false claims around this concept. And they link it to an all-encompassing conspiracy theory like the Great Reset. So one little example of how mad this is that the same people who insisted that COVID was a hoax, that it didn't actually damage us at all, are often the same people claiming that the vaccine isn't real, or the vaccine does you harm. So you end up in a place where the virus doesn't do you any harm at all, but the vaccine does. The counterintuitiveness of it is absolutely bonkers. Now, this isn't going to be a conversation specifically about the conspiracy itself. It is going to encompass the conspiracy itself, because I don't know a lot about it. I think I know probably enough, but I don't know a lot about it. But I also want to know why the hell the Secretary of State for Transport is sharing it on the conference stage? That's the crucial question, because this is as if Steve Barclay, who is currently on the stage now in Manchester, the Secretary of State for Health, imagine if the next news bulletin at 11:30, so Secretary of State for Health Steve Barclay has just claimed that COVID-19 vaccines were a conspiracy by Big Pharma and the World Economic Forum and Bill Gates to inject us all with tiny microphones that would be able to record our conversations with our nearest and dearest in order to accelerate the arrival of the Great Reset and possibly even the Great Replacement theory, which has always been beloved of white supremacists. Imagine for a moment that the Secretary of State for Health stood on stage in Manchester this morning and endorsed COVID-19 conspiracy theories. Right? Just imagine that for a moment. And now listen to the Secretary of State for Transport, because he is doing the equivalent from the perspective of his brief.
Conference, it's time for Conservatives to act. And today I'm proud to announce a comprehensive plan to back drivers. First of all, I'm calling time on the misuse of so-called 15-minute cities. Now, there's nothing wrong with making sure people can walk or cycle to the shops or school. That's traditional town planning. But what is different, what is sinister, and what we shouldn't tolerate is the idea that local councils can decide how often you go to the shops, and that they ration who uses the roads and when, and they police it all with CCTV. So today, I am announcing that the government will investigate what options we have in our toolbox to restrict overzealous use of traffic management measures, including cutting off councils from the DVLA database if they don't follow the rules.
It is 12 minutes after 11. So you heard it there. Labour councils are planning to ration the amount of journeys that you can make in your car. There's a politician called Andrew Bowie who found himself on the radio yesterday being asked about this. He's an Under-Secretary of State at the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero. That's the Secretary of State for Transport claiming, can we cut to the end of it? Can we get the little bit at the end of it as well so I can play it again, where he just goes in on the rationing of journeys and the confining the amount that you can take? And because I can't swear on the radio, as you know, and I very, very rarely do, but it is the biggest load of Horlicks you're ever going to hear from a cabinet minister until the next one stands up and starts talking complete Horlicks. It makes Rishi Sunak's claims about banning the meat tax or getting rid of those 7 bins you have to use to do your recycling look almost visionary. So that's the point. And here is a politician, a colleague of Mark Harper, being asked relatively straightforward questions about evidence for Mark Harper's claims.
We do not want local authorities dictating to people that they must choose to access those services within 15 minutes of their house, or however often they might need to access those services. That's what Mark Harper was saying today. Of course we want more services to be available locally and close to where people live. That's an eminently conservative thing to support, but we're not going to dictate to people that they must only access a service or go shopping within a 15-minute...
I understand you. I hear you. But this really gets to the heart of where the Conservative Party is positioning itself and how it is trying to conduct a debate. Nobody is proposing that they'll dictate whether you have to go within 15 minutes. They're saying, wouldn't it be nice if you could get to a shop within 15 minutes? You're not disagreeing with that. Labour are not disagreeing with that. There's no argument over that. No one is saying you have to go to the shop on a Tuesday morning and your shift is this and you can't go to that one. That's just not on the agenda. So why make the argument, pretend there's an argument about somebody dictating how often you can go to the shops?
No, but people are concerned that their liberties are going to be infringed.
Because you're making them concerned. You're spreading conspiracy theories, aren't you? There is no
nonsense. I mean, these are proposals we're seeing from local authorities up and down the country to create 15-minute neighbourhoods and communities. And whilst we support the access of services at a very local level, easily accessible by as many people as possible in their local area, what we don't want is local authorities moving down the route, which could happen, of them dictating to people where they must access services.
I mean, this is actually extraordinary. It is not happening. It is not proposed. It is not controversial. It is entirely desirable. But the Secretary of State for Transport has elected to inflate a conspiracy theory live from the conference stage, leaving his colleague there on the PM programme with Evan Davis on Radio 4 yesterday. And to be fair, you don't often hear BBC journalists coming pretty close to calling government politicians liars, for him to actually describe it as a conspiracy theory, that's a moment in BBC journalism that, as you know, I felt we should have reached about 10 years ago, or certainly 7 years ago. But that is a moment in journalism. The fact that the Secretary of State for Transport feels he can say it from the conference stage is a mark of what a poor job many journalists have done in calling out the steps towards this moment, the steps towards this position. But there he is, talking utter gibberish, culled almost entirely from your Auntie Doris's Facebook page and anti-COVID or COVID hoax Facebook pages and Telegram channels. And then when a colleague is asked to provide evidence, he first of all claims there is, and then says, well, there isn't, but there might be one day. There isn't any. There is not a single local authority in the country that has any plans whatsoever to confine you to your home, limit the number of journeys you can make, or trap you in your home. The plan is, so here are two wonderful texts to the programme. James speaks for many of you when he writes, James, can you explain what it is, please? And Sarah in Durham replied, or wrote in at the same time, 15-minute cities used to be called villages, James, where everything is within walking distance. And 13 years of Tory rule and closures of local shops and banks put paid to them. So the idea is you live in a conurbation. Everything you might reasonably need on a day-to-day basis should be within a 15-minute walk or cycle ride from your home. So here's the thing, right? I mean, I don't need you to send for the authorities. I don't need you to send me a care package or anything like that, or to stage an intervention. I live in a 15-minute city. I can walk. I don't even need to get on my bicycle. Within 15 minutes, I probably live in a 5-minute city. Good God, a 5-minute city. I can walk from my home to a supermarket, to a post office, to an optician's, to a doctor's surgery, to soon there'll be a bookshop. I don't think that's included on the list. There's a bookshop opening soon, which we're all very excited about. We've got a Greggs. We're going to have a Pret-a-Manger. We've got a wonderful Middle Eastern shop where I can get freshly made tabbouleh. All 5 minutes. Got a KFC. All 5 minutes. I should be on commission from the local estate agent, shouldn't I? All 5 minutes. I can walk. That's a 5-minute city. So developers, councils, working together to maximise the number of front doors that are within a 15-minute walk or bicycle ride of all the major amenities. You've also got to add to that list schools, clinics and parks. In fact, I've probably embellished the list a little. Schools, clinics and parks should be at the top of it. And I have all three within walking distance of my home. But do you want to know a secret? Sometimes I go to shops that are further away. That's the scandal here. That's the conspiracy. That's Mark Harper's policy. Because he's determined to ensure that I can go to shops that are further away. Or parks. Can't really go to a clinic that's further away than the one you're registered at because you're not registered at it. But I don't think we should burden his little brain with problems like that. So you have a Secretary of State for Transport who is doing two things. He's talking gibberish that I presume he knows is gibberish, although that's going to be one of the questions that I ask you. But he's also endorsing scaremongering lies, because that is a synonym for conspiracy theory. They are lies designed to frighten you, because the more frightened you are, the more power I, as the person sharing the lie, accrue. So what you have now is a senior member of the British cabinet standing up at the party conference and telling frightening lies to the country while promising to protect them from this non-existent threat. And I think that's a moment. I think that's a moment. So why is he doing it? 0345 6060 973. And as a side issue, the question of the question of how people end up believing bilge like this, okay? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. 20 minutes after 11 is the time. Why is Mark Harper and indeed Andrew Bowie, why are they claiming that there is a threat to our freedom when there isn't? 0345 6060 973. And why are people so susceptible? Some people, not many, but they've obviously calculated that there are enough of them to bring this onto the conference stage. Why are people susceptible to this utter bilge? It's 20 minutes after 11. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC.
James O'Brien on LBC. James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 23 minutes after 11. You're absolutely correct, James, says Gary in Halifax. Harper is appealing to the lockdown sceptics. I'll bet you £1 or a free book from you. That's not a fair trade, is it? So you get a book and I get a quid that someone at the conference will mention the World Economic Forum within the next day. Maybe the Tories are copying New Labour, says Keith in Stoke, and their 45 minutes imaginary threat from weapons of mass destruction. And then Keith adds just saying, which is very kind, actually, because if people put just saying at the end of their tweets or text, then it usually means that they make their way straight into Idiot's Corner. Got the lockdown sceptics, and I haven't spoken to members of my family for 7 years because they voted for Brexit. But from what I hear, they're still down rabbit holes and think that the Turks are coming to get them. Everything that's wrong with the country is the fault of the European Union. And the 15-minute cities appeals directly to people like them. I don't know. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. If you can tell me why Mark Harper is bringing a bona fide copper-bottomed conspiracy theory onto the stage of the Conservative Party conference. Because I genuinely don't understand why. Largely because of what I just played you with Andrew Bowie being pulled to pieces by a relatively mild questioning about what the proof is of the fact that this is actually a plan. Hit the numbers now, you will get through. And I think I've explained what it is. So if you need to know what it is, if you're not part of either the conspiracy or the cognoscenti, then it is a deliberate drive towards making sure that everyone in a city lives within a 15-minute walk or bike ride of all the basic services they will need. The question of how anyone's managed to turn that into a negative is one that we should probably ask as well. Max is in Chelmsford. Max, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. First-time caller, long-time listener.
Welcome aboard.
A little bit nervous.
It's only me.
I think the Transport Secretary is just basically trying to get votes in from as many votes in as possible, really.
So you don't think there's any votes to lose on this, then?
No, because I feel like they're playing off the conspiracy card, because I feel like pre-COVID, not everyone was using the internet as much as they are now. And post-COVID, even my mum, for example, she was never into technology before, but now she's addicted to Facebook Reels, and she was even caught up in some of these conspiracy theories through Facebook.
What does she get out of it? What does she get out of it?
I guess a sense of importance and feeling like their voices are being heard.
Yeah. It's mad that someone who's been in power for 13 years, or a government that's been in power for 13 years, would be appealing with conspiracy theories to people who feel disenfranchised and dispossessed. But if we were completely cynical about it, then the answer would be, well, it works. It makes him more likely to get your mum's vote.
Yeah, I feel like it's just desperation at this point.
Do we know why? Because I can see the environmental argument for trying to get people out of cars, and that, of course, explains the congestion charge. And ULEZ as well. But beyond that, do we know why councils want us not to? I mean, what is the conspiracy? What's the reason? If it's not the reason they give us, that they think it would be great to have all the amenities within 15 minutes of our front door, what's the secret reason for introducing this? Do we know?
I couldn't think of any off the top of my head, to be honest with you, James.
We're going to have to invite someone to ring in and tell us, aren't we? Because I know the broad talk about great resets, but I never know why why are they doing it? Why don't they want me to have a shop within 15 minutes? Or rather, what's the secret negative? Then becomes a question as well. Max, take care. Great debut. 27 after 11 is the time. Elliot's in Blackburn. Elliot, maybe I can't control things in this way, but it's more about what the hell is a Secretary of State playing at, saying this stuff on stage with a side order of how can people fall for it? What would you like to say?
Well, I think it just really comes from a place of desperation, if I'm being brutally honest with you.
This is the Mark Harper explanation.
To be honest with you, the more broad narrative that the Conservative Party seems to be going towards at the moment anyway, in terms of Rishi Sunak with all these kind of 7-bin nonsense and things like that, I think it's just trying to shift the narrative onto something where if they throw enough kind of dodgy mud at the wall, that some of it might stick with certain people and it may just gain them a few extra votes.
But they're not throwing mud, they're snorting it, aren't they? Because they're responding to mud that's been thrown by conspiracy theorists and weirdos. This isn't even their own mud. The meat tax, I think, was possibly their own mud, but this is post-COVID hoax mud.
And what I do think, actually, that eventually it may even come back to bite them, the fact that they are taking all this mud on board, because actually I think any sort of kind of left-leaning One Nation conservative would usually scoff at the idea of a lot of this stuff that's coming out at the moment. Yeah. So in terms of the voters themselves that they may be trying to gain externally from maybe the kind of maybe a right-wing kind of...
Well, yeah, I think you're probably right, but let's nudge now towards, we haven't got long, what are you and me supposed to be frightened of that we're not at the moment?
Well, I think it does nothing.
No, but he said, what did he say? They'd ration our car journeys or something like that.
Yeah, he did. And again, I think...
Will they ration my shop visits? Will they keep count of how many times I've been to Greg's? Actually, that might be quite helpful.
Potentially, with the use of CCTV, I reckon they probably may want us to think that they will.
No, you've done it now, Elliot.
I know.
Because you know what's going to happen. What's going to appear by lunchtime is someone's going to claim that this plan now by the government, which I don't really like the look of, but I don't know if you've heard that they're going to use your passport photo and CCTV to track down shoplifters. If I was one of these conspiracy theorists, I would already be arguing it's not shoplifters. Just you wait, it's going to be actual bona fide shoppers, and you're going to be limited to the amount of times you can go to the shop in a day. That's going to be next.
It makes people feel vulnerable, doesn't it? And when you go back to the COVID days where people were we weren't discussing necessarily the wider narrative because we were so focused on keeping everybody safe during COVID.
Yes.
If they can produce that kind of environment again, they will potentially think that actually people won't necessarily scrutinise the things that we should be scrutinising because we're all scared about how often we'll be able to go to the shops.
Yes. And you know, I suppose the more gullible you are, the more frightened you become, and the more frightened you become, the more you pursue a sort of false power in that I know the truth about this and you don't. I don't know Mark Harper. I don't know a great deal about him, but even post Grayling, post Johnson, post Dorries, post Rees-Mogg, it's almost reassuring that our capacity for being shocked by what these people will say in public is still in place. Thomas Watts is here now with your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC. James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 11:34 and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Sort of two or three conversations unfolding simultaneously. The first is, why is Mark Harper indulging in conspiracies live from the conference stage? I mean, to the point where his colleague Andrew Bowie on the radio yesterday, when asked why he was doing it, said this is coming up in discussions on doorsteps up and down the country. It's coming up in discussions forums online. People are concerned and we need to address those concerns. Well, look, I can find you someone in 5 seconds flat who's concerned about QAnon. I can find you someone in a forum online who thinks that there's a paedophile conspiracy being run from a cellar under a pizza restaurant in New York that doesn't actually have a cellar, to the point where someone turned up there with a gun not long ago. I can find you people in forums online who think that Donald Trump was the real winner of the election in America, the last election in America. I can find you people online who think that the vaccine, the COVID-19 vaccine, contains little microphones and trackers designed to allow Bill Gates to know where we are at all hours of the day. I can go on an online forum and find people who think that the earth is flat. I can go on an online forum and find people who think that Boris Johnson was a good prime minister. You go on an online forum, mate, you can find absolutely anything. Why is the Conservative Party choosing to address these concerns? Not by saying this is nonsense, but by saying, yes, this is true, and this is what Labour are doing. I mean, look, objectively, it's grim and probably a bit scary. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. Derek is in Orpington. Derek, what made you pick up the phone?
Hi, James.
Hello,
I heard the beginning of the conversation about the 15-minute cities and this Tory Minister bringing it up and you dismissing it as a conspiracy theory. I just wanted to phone in because I'm a bit confused.
Okay.
I live in Kent, and I read a newspaper online called Kent Online. It's a newspaper. It's just a regional one. And last year and this year, they were talking about Canterbury, and they were talking about the council there wanted to bring in what was known as a 15-minute city.
Yes.
Now, it was...
They have. They already have. It's incorporated into their policy plans alongside Ipswich and Bristol and several other councils as well.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the thing is, it says it's an approach to urban design that aims to improve quality of life by creating cities where everything a resident needs can be reached within 15 minutes by foot, bike or public transport.
Or bicycle.
Canterbury Council have taken the approach one step further to tackle congestion, which would see the city sit into 5 zones with residents banned from driving directly between each.
No, that's not true.
You
can't be banned from driving. But even if you were, that's not 15-minute city policy.
Well, they said that motorists would be unable to take simple journeys across the city and could face fines by being detected by number plate recognitions.
Yeah, that's the conspiracy. Yeah. And now, in Oxford, they introduced a 100 journey car limit on private vehicles going into 6 specific areas of the city. But that is designed to reduce the amount of cars on the road. It's not designed to reduce your freedom. You might not like it, and you might feel that it is a restriction on your freedom. But I think I can help you here. The key element of the conspiracy is the motivation for doing it. So why are they doing it? Answer, because they want fewer cars on the road, right?
Oh, yeah, I can understand that.
The conspiracy theorist answer is, why are they doing it? Because they want to control you and confine you to your home. That's the point. And Mark Harper is siding with the people who are trying to frighten you against the people. And most of the examples that are cited don't even include the traffic calming measures that you describe. They are literally designed to ensure that you have the amenities you need within 15 minutes of your front door.
No, that sounds absolutely great, but we don't sort of live in that world, do we? I mean, my nearest supermarket's a 20-minute drive away, or whatever. You know, I'd have to. If I didn't have a compliant car, I'd be paying this wretched ULEZ to get into it. And if you told me 2 years ago I'd have to pay £12, I don't. But some people would have to pay £12.50 to take their car off.
But this is a drive towards a world in which there is a supermarket nearer to you. That's all it is.
But I can't see how they're going to do that, because the whole...
But they might not. They might not, but all the policy means is that they're going to try.
Well, I just don't understand, because everything's been working the opposite way, hasn't it? Because they've out-towned everything.
Well, now we're getting to the heart of it. So after 13 years of Tory rule, where the idea of having the amenities that you need on your doorstep is for a growing number of people absolutely out of reach, why would they be attacking plans to bring it back? Answer, because it highlights how badly things have gone for the last 13 years.
Well, the thing was, it was a Tory council that was trying to bring in this thing in Canterbury.
But I'm talking about at a national level. But then you have another question. If this is a good example of a Tory council trying to do it, why is Mark Harper claiming that it's only Labour councils?
Well, exactly. I mean, it's just all smear, isn't it?
I think it is. And I think it's designed to frighten us and make us think that there's places we can't go without our cars. There are already lots of places we can't go with our cars. You can't go into your local football ground. You can't drive it into your local shopping centre. There's lots of places you've got to park and walk. And in this case, it would include your house. You just would be able to walk to places. But he's trying to frighten people.
Yeah, it's just what horrible politics we've got, James, and it's on both sides.
I'll allow that. I'll allow that for now. I mean, I don't think you're going to get any shadow cabinet ministers standing up. And where is the Labour conference next week? Do you know, Derek?
No,
that's the Tories.
That's where the Tories are.
This is called.
No, I did hear it, but
this is called crowdsourcing. This is. I don't know where. I don't know where it is either, mate. But luckily, my producer will have the fact at her absolute be on the tip of her tongue. She won't have to look it up or anything. She'll know exactly where it's being held. It's in Liverpool. So I don't think you'll get a shadow cabinet minister standing up in Liverpool next week and saying anything that gets filed under conspiracy theory. I just don't. So I'll give you they're as bad as each other, but on this specific example, pandering to the conspiracy theorists, they've set up a whole TV channel to do it. A lot of Tories queuing up to praise GBBs, even as it peddles a lot of these conspiracies as easily as the rest of us breathe. I don't think Labour are that bad.
Jury's out.
Well, I'll ring you back then. I'll ring you back when Labour conference is finished, and I'll ask you again.
Yeah, well, if I get to see or hear any of it,
well, you can't cop out like that, Derek. You can't. That's like, so they have told some egregious lies, but they go to a different school. That's not allowed. But anyway, I hope I've explained a little bit about the confusion surrounding this issue. The idea that traffic calming measures are designed not to calm traffic, but to curtail our liberties. It plays very well, I think, to a certain type of motorist, not just a certain type of conspiracy theorist addict, but it is really, really dangerous for the reasons that are becoming ever clearer. 11:41 is the time. Jana is in Leytonstone. Jana, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. I just wanted to say that you were asking in a very hypothetical way what possible reason could anybody have for worrying about 15-minute neighborhoods. So I thought I'd take you seriously, and I give you two reasons. I think that potentially, if an area provides a person or a family with everything they need within walking distance, or, the distance a human being can traverse without a car, then it diffuses somewhat policies or campaigns aimed at motorists. Because, if you only need your car every so often in order to go and, go to a lumber store to pick up a big load of wood or something, then you can be less vulnerable to that kind of nonsense. And the second reason, and I think the more important reason, actually, is if in the long term areas provide you with what you need, so you don't have to venture out of them for your most immediate needs, then you're constantly moving within an area. You're constantly seeing the same people and crossing paths with people. And areas become neighborhoods. And people encounter each other. They get to know each other. They get to communicate with each other and campaign for what they want, like, say, a crossings point or traffic lights or something. And if you get to know people, then you're less likely to be afraid of them, which makes you less vulnerable to conspiracy theories and less prone to being herded by fear. And I think that if you're a completely stupid party that's been in power for 13 years, and that all of these problems which you've brought up have been essentially brought about by yourselves, you've got to be able to point at something else. You've got to be able to point at the other in order to explain the complete farcical situation we found each other in, which means you've got to manufacture a farce.
Well, I think that's a really strong analysis and a little bit tongue-in-cheek, obviously, because what you describe as what is a threat to them sounds rather delightful to the rest of us. But the idea that you can distract from things you've actually done by directing people to things that the other side haven't actually done. Actually, now I've said those words out loud, it does work, doesn't it? History has taught us that it works.
It absolutely does.
Yes, of course it does.
Because the thing is, I think it's all part of a piece of the reasons Brexit came into play, and also, the coincidence of the pandemic striking when it did. Those were kind of existential threats on some level to people. They provoked people's fear response. People's fear response is, instead of hovering around a neutral of 0, it hasn't gone back to that, and everybody's sort of hovering around 3. Everybody's more inclined to be triggered. You've got further to go. You've got not further to go. You've got less far to go to find yourself suddenly alarmed. And so, if you can't sell some people something good, then at least sell them something bad that they can be afraid of and that they can huddle against. You've covered it, and it fits very neatly into what Naomi Klein has written about the space created by lockdowns and COVID needing to be filled by something. And that's why there's so much crossover between all of these different factions. Even when they find themselves contradicting their last conspiracy, they just park it and move on to the new one. It's pretty chilling. I mean, briefly, because I'm already a bit late for the next junction, but how significant is it that a Secretary of State is now doing this in public on the party conference stage? Oh, I think it's hugely significant. I think it speaks volumes as to the point that we've arrived at in terms of, even if you look at, GB News is describing itself as being a news channel, but basically it's just a campaigning instrument. But it's very alarming. But it also speaks of the desperation, I think, of the Tories. So it's alarming, but it is also,
I see what you mean.
It indicates that they're on the way out. They know they're on the way out. But how much damage are they going to do?
Well, you took the words
to
straight
the
out of my mouth.
Psyche?
Yes, what are they going to drag down? Yes. I hear you. Sorry, that was me sort of heading towards the junction. I didn't mean to cut you off in your prime, but you literally took the words out of my mouth. How much damage are they going to do? I don't know. They're going down swinging. I think they're using it because they think it will garner votes from these dark corners of the internet. BBC Verify has done an excellent analysis of exactly what is going on. I really recommend it. But of course, BBC Verify, a fact-checking division of an impartial organisation, is proof to the conspiracy theories of the conspiracy, because the only impartial news they get is the news that's telling them the conspiracy theories are true. And so round we go again. It's 11:47.
James O'Brien on LBC. James O'Brien on LBC.
Well, this is awkward. I think we might have to reverse the thrust of the entire 15-minute city conversation as it's been undertaken so far, because Sean has been in touch from rural Lincolnshire, and he writes, James, you must stop 15-minute cities immediately. As someone who mostly listens to your show in the car, shorter journeys risk cutting your vast listening figures. No wonder Suella Braverman and co. really like the idea. Or rather, suddenly Suella Braverman really likes the idea. Yes. Actually, to clarify, because I just had a look at what Derek was telling us about Canterbury, that would involve longer journeys. So you got under the plan, which hasn't been implemented, you'd go to the outer ring road and drive around and then come back in to the other area. So you split the city into 5 areas. You can't drive from one to the other. You have to go to the outer ring road and go round it and then come back in again. So that, and as he pointed out to us, it's a Tory council, but that, of course, involves motorists being forced to make longer journeys, not being forced to make no journeys, but to make longer journeys than they would have done already. So everywhere you turn, you can see why the conspiracy theories take hold, because, well, it's either confusing or it's not what it says on the tin. The question of why Mark Harper is trying to inflate it for votes becomes actually more sinister all the time. 11:52 is the time. Jackie's in Stuttgart in Germany. Jackie, what would you like to say?
Morning, James.
Hello.
The last 2 callers were absolutely fascinating.
Well, weren't they?
Funny you come back to Derek, because I was just thinking that's precisely the kind of voter that this is aimed at.
Yes.
He's got sort of half a story and can't believe that this government would be so egregious as to spread utter twaddle.
Yeah, and no blame on him, though. That's a perfectly normal. Good. Yeah.
It's in the paper, and like you say, it's not clear. So, you can't drive through the city. No, you have to go round the city, but nobody's saying you can't get in your car.
Yes, exactly.
And there's an air of desperation about the Tories now that's so thick you could chew it. They have nothing left.
Yes.
There's nothing left. They can't campaign on any of the things that they did 4 years ago, 5 years ago, because it's all gone belly up. Brexit, immigration, the economy, all of it. They have nothing left.
It is actually remarkable, isn't it? I mean, every single thing.
Not a single thing.
Vaccine rollout. The vaccine rollout was successful, and for a month or so we were a little bit.
For 20 minutes it was the fastest.
Yes, exactly.
We know we had it every week at Prime Minister's
We did.
Question
Yeah, I take your point.
But no, they have nothing left. So now they're coming up with this absolute nonsense, and they really are going for the motorists now. They're going for. It's apparently everywhere in Wales now. You can't do 25 miles an hour. You can't take your car.
Mark Drakeford has pointed out that that's not true, but it doesn't matter anymore.
But the Prime Minister, we're talking about a Secretary of State talking this utter nonsense about 15-minute cities, which is a village. I live in one.
Yes.
I've got 2 bakeries, a butcher, a doctor, everything within 5 minutes.
Candlestick maker?
We haven't got one of them.
There you go, you see.
We do a shop that sells candles, though. But, no, so you've got everything there. It's a brilliant idea. Nobody's saying that you can only go shopping for 15 minutes every other Tuesday. It's nonsense. And people are concerned about it. Yeah, because you're making them concerned.
And you're telling them to be frightened.
And
you expect
them to be
that.
frightened. And then you've got Rishi Sunak, the actual Prime Minister, coming on television and saying there's a blanket 20 mile an hour speed limit in Wales.
Across the whole of Wales. And there's a war on the motorist. There's a war on the motorist, didn't you know?
Yes, there's a war on the motorist. But they've nothing at all left. Nothing. What else have they?
Well, I hesitate to speculate, to be honest, in case they're listening.
People believe it because it was interesting. He said, well, it could happen. Yeah, what else could happen? You could have your right to peaceful protest be criminalised.
Yeah,
you could have your right to strike taken away.
Yeah, done that.
Yeah, who's done that?
Yeah.
It's not Labour.
We could use CCTV to track everybody in the country.
Things that are absolutely unthinkable 10 years ago the Tories have done in the last few years.
Well, I don't know if you saw the footage of Nigel Farage and Priti Patel dancing together on
I nearly brought up my breakfast. God.
Yes, I know. I mean, but you just said think of something that 10 years ago would have been unthinkable, and there it is.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. So it could happen.
You'll like this. This is from Robert. He says, I think we've reached the Alan Partridge equivalent of monkey tennis with this government now. So Mark Harper on 15 Minute Cities is like Alan Partridge trying to sell monkey tennis to a cable TV station.
It beggars belief. It's so sad to see.
Yeah. Will it work? I mean, does it draw more? I suppose it does, doesn't it? Because, I can't reach everybody that has listened to Mark Harper and not listened to me this morning, or listen to you, or listen to anybody else sort of trying to get something close to the facts out there. Does it work? Do people now?
I think for some people it will. That's the sad thing, because we are scared. People they have reason to be scared, like I said, with the right to peaceful protest taken away, the right to strike taken away. So these things could happen. And if you're only getting half a story from a badly written article in a local newspaper.
Yeah. No, a local online website designed to get clicks. Don't forget as well. There it is. That's what he's doing. That is politics by internet clicks. Not even votes, just clicks. Mark Harper wants your clicks. We let Rees-Mogg off the hook yesterday. He said yesterday, I want cheaper food. I want hormone-injected beef from Australia. I've eaten beef in Australia. It's delicious. There's nothing wrong with it. If you think that Jacob Rees-Mogg's nanny goes into Waitrose and buys the cheapest meat available, I've got a bridge I want to sell you. That's just an opportunity for big businesses to make even more money out of feeding rubbish to your children, not his. But there it is. I mean, it's all out in the open now. And I didn't make that up about Priti Patel and Nigel Farage dancing together. Sorry. Dancing together at the Conservative Party Congress. I think they might be old family friends, actually. Didn't her dad run as a UKIP candidate? Back when it was still shameful to be associated with that agenda, rather than these days when it is indistinguishable from the Conservative Party agenda. Anyway, it's all in the new book. Sebastian's in Berlin. Look at that. One German city to another. Sebastian, what would you like to say? Stuttgart's in Germany. Stuttgart is in Germany, isn't it?
At some point, I will visit it.
Yes. I wasn't putting any pressure on you. It was my geography I was checking.
That's all good.
Carry on. What do you want to say?
It's all good. I've been listening to you since I was still living in the UK before Brexit started really hitting home.
Yeah.
And just want to say, big fan, love your show.
Thank you.
So, I left Jaguar Land Rover and automotive engineering behind to pursue a career in marketing and copywriting.
Okay.
And while reading an excellent book by Seth Godin, big marketer for a long time,
yes,
I came across a particular chapter that really puts conspiracy theories into perspective.
Okay.
So the chapter is called An Aside About the Reptile People Who Are Secretly Running Things. So basically it's about, I know.
Well, that's David Icke, and he had a wonderful little resurgence during lockdown, didn't he? He sort of gathered a lot of attention from some of the people who've ended up with their own TV station. We are going to run out of time, so I'll shut up and you speak uninterrupted.
All right, I'll make it really quick. So Professor Ronald Imhoff at Johannes Gutenberg University in Mainz, Germany, studied why people embrace conspiracy theories. These theories, though lacking facts, attract individuals who seek uniqueness, not truth. Imhoff's research shows that conspiracy theorists find themselves in being outliers and are driven by a desire for distinctiveness. You see, from marketing, I can tell you that people don't buy things because of logical reasons. They buy things because of emotional ones, and then they justify those purchases through logic. So, for instance, when presented with fabricated statistics about a conspiracy, American conspiracy theorists were more interested if they believed only a minority supported it.
Yeah.
They don't see themselves as oddities, but exactly. It just makes you
visionaries,
feel
not oddities, but visionaries.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah,
That's love. Thank you for that. What's the name of the author?
Yeah, no problem. Seth Godin. The book is called This is Marketing.
Cool. I like that a lot. And of course, the skills of marketing, there's a lot of crossover with the skills of conspiracy. Like snake oil. You can sell snake oil. You can sell anything. And you can end up dancing with Priti Patel at the Tory Party conference as well, it would appear. Thank you for that. That was lovely, Sebastian. It's coming up to 12 noon. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. What do you want to do next? We've got quite a lot to choose from. I don't know whether we're going back to the politics. There is something that, a bit like Mark Harper standing up on stage in Manchester and essentially inflating the most stupid of conspiracy and dangerous of conspiracy theories. Susan Hall, the Conservative candidate for London Mayor, did something last night that I think is spectacularly dangerous and disgusting. But I want to know what you think.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 3 minutes after 12, and we come now to a conversation I really don't want to have, actually, because I've seen quite a few tweets wondering whether the Tories at this particular conference are going to come up with anything at all that might be described as uniting our country. The inimitable Ian Dunt has made that point in characteristically foul-mouthed ways. Is it all going to be about driving more wedges between us? I think, did I open the week, or was it last week, talking about Linton Crosby and Isaac Levido, the so-called gurus behind election victories in Australia and the UK, who just deal in wedge issues. So they're trying to find the thing that will drive us apart. And the motoring seems to be the one that they've settled on. That's why Sunak spent the weekend blathering nonsensically about a war on motorists. If you've been in power for 13 years, where do you find your enemies? Where do you find the thing that you're going to fix? Because the last lot, it is astonishing, really, truly astonishing. But the division, if it's motorists or 15-minute cities, is a combination of sinister and silly, right? I can't quite see it leading anywhere truly horrible. Susan Hall, the Labour candidate for mayor last night, claimed that Jewish communities are frightened by the Muslim mayor of London, Sadiq Khan. And I think this might be a new low in British political discourse. I know that Zach Goldsmith, who I think was actually advised by Linton Crosby, I could be wrong about that, feel free to check. I know that he led a racist campaign against Sadiq Khan when they were competing against each other to become Mayor of London, claiming, I think, to Hindu voters that Sadiq Khan had designs on their jewellery or something like that. And there was one leaflet in Havering which was actually withdrawn, just speaking to ancient hatreds and ancient bigotries. And subsequently, the Conservative candidate for Mayor of London, Zach Goldsmith, claimed, for example, that he didn't know an article he wrote for the Mail on Sunday had been illustrated with a photograph of the bus that Islamist terrorists blew up on July the 7th. It happened inadvertently, which has become very popular since, hasn't it? But this seems to me to be, and I know that a lot of fans of Jeremy Corbyn will think that he was similarly mistreated, but unfortunately the things that Jeremy Corbyn, unfortunately for you, the things that he was criticised for, whether it was his associations with Hamas and Hezbollah or his support for people like Stephen Sizer and Raed Salah, that the evidence was there, or indeed the endorsement of the anti-Semitic cartoon on the Facebook page that he somehow managed to support and subsequently claim he hadn't seen. That did I say Labour candidate? A couple of people are ringing in to correct me. Obviously, she's the Tory candidate. Do you know why I said Labour candidate? Because I've got a brain worm. She called herself the Labour candidate the other night to become London Mayor. She said she was going to be the first female Labour Mayor of London. But that's just basic incompetence, which I just indulged in as well. That's a slip of the tongue. And we all have slips of the tongue. So we won't make much of that, and we haven't made much of that. Instead, we'll look at what she said. Now, I probably know more about what Sadiq Khan endures than any other journalist in the United Kingdom. You'd have to check with him. But because he comes in here every month and does this programme, not just because it's the biggest on LBC, but also because he retains a degree of unhappiness with journalists who spent Zach Goldsmith's racist mayoral campaign amplifying Zach Goldsmith and tickling Zach Goldsmith's toes. So, it's, I think, quite reasonable if somebody has essentially endorsed a racist campaign to avoid their company for the foreseeable future. But I also do public events with him. So we do a thing at the O2 every year where people come in and ask the mayor questions, and they always get infiltrated. I also did his book launch at the Royal Festival Hall, which also got infiltrated. And it is by far the nastiest public hatred I have ever witnessed. And of course, the people who have what you might loosely describe as legitimate objections to, for example, the low emission zones, the ULEZ that Boris Johnson introduced and Sadiq Khan has expanded, even leaving aside for the moment that these people didn't turn up to attack Boris Johnson for the same policy, but they do it. So even allowing that it is legitimate, they get infiltrated by the Islamophobes and the fans of Little Tommy 10 names and the sort of BNP EDL contingent. And I know that because I've seen them. I've heard what they chant in the hall, and I've seen what they wear on these occasions. And it is, and I lead a relatively sheltered life. Most of my exposure is mitigated by studio walls and by microphones. I never get any unpleasantness in public, ever, actually. Apart from that one occasion years ago in Paris that I told you about, which was memorable only for the wife of the bloke abusing me looking so absolutely heartbroken and crestfallen that I ended up feeling sorrier for her than I did for my own family. But the vitriol, the bile. I'll give you an example. So at the book launch, which is a book about the environment, as you know, and largely inspired by the Kissy Deborah family, and he walks out onto the stage on his own to deliver a speech, and within 2 minutes of standing up to deliver a speech, people have paid to attend this event. A bloke stands up and he shouts, "F off, Goebbels, you lying C-word." All right? My nephews were at that event. They're young. It was the hall was full of children. Those are the people that lead the lies and hatred at Sadiq Khan, largely in my view, because he's a Muslim. Certainly that's what Zach Goldsmith was playing at during his racist campaign. And of all the criticisms and condemnations of Sadiq Khan that I've ever seen, I've actually never, even in that sewer that I've just described to you, which I think, unfortunately, I probably have more experience of than any other journalist in the country for the reasons that I've just explained to you. Even in those sewers that I have been forced to explore in his company, I've never heard anyone accuse him of anti-Semitism. Never have I heard anyone accuse him of anti-Semitism. Until last night.
I believe in this country, live in London. I live in North London, and I know the wealth and the joy of the community. But I tell you something else, I know how frightened some of the community is because of the divisive attitude of Sadiq Khan. One of the most important things that we can do when I become Mayor of London is to make it safer for everybody, but particularly for our Jewish community. So I will ask for as much help as I can get in London because we need to defeat him, particularly for our Jewish community.
Now, the Board of Deputies of British Jews is an important and vocal organisation, and they wasted no time whatsoever in explaining that Sadiq Khan had always, and I quote, treated our community with friendship and respect. They expressed a desire to hold a hustings with all the candidates before the mayoral vote next May, and I quote again, where it will be clear that while London Jews have varying political views, there is no fear present at all. So Susan Hall, who has already been publicly outed as an admirer of Enoch Powell, although when she was interviewed by Nick last week or the week before, she claimed that she'd liked a post praising Enoch Powell because she was worried about traffic jams. And she's also publicly expressed admiration and agreement with a woman called Katie Hopkins, who younger listeners thankfully won't have any idea who I'm talking about, but who was one of the sort of early pioneers of the kind of commoditized bile and hatred that has become commonplace subsequently, not least, of course, with the founding of television stations dedicated to disseminating that kind of bile. So, not unlike 15-minute cities, but in a much more serious way, there is a temptation not to give any oxygen at all to stuff like this, up to the point where you think that you have to. And I think that I mean, she is a senior politician, isn't she? You can't cut it any other way. As a member of the Greater London Assembly, you could possibly write her off as a bit fringe, even if she's the leader of the Tories. It's local politics. Mayor of London is a national office. I know it's not technically national, but it's national, right? It's notionally, it's not. It's national. It's a national. You know the name of the Mayor of London. I also know the name of the Mayor of Birmingham, the Mayor of Manchester, and the Mayor of the Metropolitan Liverpool. But we probably all know the name of the Mayor of London, wherever you are in the UK. Therefore, it's important. I think it needs to be talked about. I'd remind you that Suella Braverman, the current Home Secretary, has rejected calls from Holocaust survivors to moderate the language that she uses when talking about refugees. Certainly in the case of Joan Salter, who attended a constituency meeting in Fareham to express her horror at the language Braverman uses, and Braverman, predictably perhaps, essentially told her to be quiet and sit down. She wouldn't be changing her language at all. And I think there's been another one more recently where Conservative politicians have rejected calls to stop deploying what Gary Lineker might have described as the language of 1930s Germany from people descended from people who fled 1930s Germany. That's just for context. But I'm not Jewish, and I think of all the lessons I've learnt while presenting this programme, probably anti-Semitism is one of the biggest. Probably the role of anti-Semitism is one of the biggest. The conflation of criticism of Israeli foreign or domestic policy with ancient hatreds akin to the blood libel is something that you've thankfully held my hand throughout. And yet even Sadiq Khan's vilest abusers, up to and including death threats that are part of his routine, even Sadiq Khan's vilest abusers have never accused him of anti-Semitism. So I've got two questions for you. It may be confined to Jewish listeners in the first instance, but not necessarily. Well, I've kind of got three questions really, but one of them is a question I try to avoid. I think today I have to ask it. What is she playing at? 0345 6060 973. A Conservative candidate for London Mayor. I've even got a mate of mine on Twitter sending me a picture here of, he's a mate in real life, but I've seen the picture on Twitter of Sadiq Khan's signing in ceremony, and my friend Paul's brother, who's a rabbi, is sitting there. He's sitting there at the signing in ceremony, witnessing it. What is she playing at? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. And in the context of anti-Semitism, that's not the right word. In the context of things, I mean, what would happen if she'd used another community to claim that Sadiq Khan was somehow causing them specific fear? I don't even know the answer to that question. I don't think it's worth asking. What is she playing at here? 0345 6060 973. And if you're part of London's Jewish community, I mean, I kind of have to invite you to agree with her, don't I? Are you, as a Jewish Londoner, frightened of Sadiq Khan? 0345 6060 973. I live, writes Neil, in the heart of the Orthodox Jewish community. I have never heard any of my hundreds of Jewish or Israeli friends or relatives say that they were afraid of Sadiq Khan. A lot of them, although not me, are upset about ULEZ. But I have literally heard nothing about anti-Semitism. So why is she saying it, if it's not true? 0345 6060 973. Listen, this is live, right? And this happened last night, and a lot of you are hearing it for the first time. And I think in that clip you could sense there was shock in that room. There certainly wasn't any cheer or applause. And I think that it's just been reported she's a no-show at a conference event. So it could be that the wheels are turning as we speak, which makes me wonder whether it is correct for me to ask if she's right. You can ring this program and say what you want. You know that within the law and within reason. But why is she doing this? And if you are Jewish, you can advise me on whether I should be as shocked as I currently am, because I do this for a living, right? I deal in controversy and provocation every day, and a bit like doctors becoming a little bit desensitized to not to humanity, but to the situations in which they find themselves every day. I think I become a little bit desanitized by scandal. You know, there's a tiny little bit of me that now, after doing it for so long, possibly sometimes thinks, oh, that's a good thing for us to talk about tomorrow, instead of having the initial reaction of utter revulsion. But this one was a little bit different, actually. This one was a genuine shock at what she's done. If I say how big a deal is it, that almost sounds like I'm trivialising it. So pretend that I've asked you that question in more academic language. What is she doing? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. And why is she doing it? And that, I suppose, leaves the door open for you to tell me that actually you think she's got a point, although I cannot at the moment, for the life of me, imagine what that point might be. I'll come back in a minute and play you the clip again. But from where I sit, Sadiq Khan he's got lots of things wrong, and there's lots of things he could have done and hasn't done, or should have done and didn't do. But the one area where I think he has been absolutely exceptional is in the area of uniting faiths and recognising the importance of celebration and recognising what we have in common. So for her to essentially accuse him of anti-Semitism makes my blood run cold. What about you? 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. It's coming up to 12:20.
James O'Brien on LBC. James O'Brien on LBC.
12:22. So have another listen to this. It is someone who seeks a role on the national stage as mayor of the capital city, accusing her rival of frightening Jews. And I don't understand why she's done it. And I'd like you to tell me why you think she's done it and or whether you agree. Okay, the number you need is 0345 6060 973. In the meantime, have another listen.
I believe in this country, live in London. I live in North London, and I know the wealth and the joy of the community. But I tell you something else, I know how frightened some of the community is because of the divisive attitude of Sadiq Khan. One of the most important things that we can do when I become Mayor of London is to make it safer for everybody, but particularly for our Jewish community. So I will ask for as much help as I can get in London, because we need to defeat him, particularly for our Jewish community.
What's she talking about and why? 0345 6060 973. I can tell you that she was due to be on a conference fringe meeting right now, but has mysteriously not turned up. Peter Walker, who's in Manchester for The Guardian, writes, I wonder if it's linked to her much criticised comments last night that London's Jewish communities are, quotes, frightened about, quotes, divisive Sadiq Khan. I have seen more abuse of Sadiq Khan on my screen than any other politician ever, by a country mile, partly because he's in the studio with me at the time. And I've seen the vilest of abuse, the most Islamophobic and disgusting ad hominem attacks imaginable. I've never seen anyone call him anti-Semitic. What the hell is Susan Hall thinking? Dina is in Clapham. Dina, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Yeah. I think I can answer your question. Firstly, I just want to say I'm not a fan of Sadiq Khan because of ULEZ and LTNs. And as a Jewish person from London, I have never felt that there has ever been anything anti-Semitic coming out of his mouth. As a Jewish person living in London, I do fear anti-Semitism. I do fear it's on the rise. I feel very strongly about it, and but not from Sadiq.
No.
I think that she possibly saw the demise of Jeremy Corbyn because of the accusations that he was anti-Semitic, and then Boris got in, and wondered if the same trick would work for her.
Except that, you can find lots of well, you can find Jewish members of the Labour Party. You can find Jewish MPs who felt that Jeremy Corbyn was anti-Semitism adjacent. There was evidence you could cite in defence of your position in his case. There isn't any here. I'm literally looking at a picture now of his multi-faith signing in session, and a pal of mine called Paul writes, "My brother, a rabbi, is on the left behind him." There is no evidence that Jewish communities are frightened of Khan. So, there's no smoke, let alone no fire.
But I was cross as well. To use that it was wrong. And I'm tempted to vote for anybody that says they're going to get rid of ULIS the second they get in.
Just the extended, so not the one that Boris Johnson introduced.
Oh, that's all right. That one doesn't affect us.
Yeah, that's how it works, isn't it?
But no, I think she has realised it's backfired. It made me cross. She will realise it's stupid, and she will have shot herself in the foot.
I hope so. You have to hope so. And I suppose to broaden the conversation out to the bigger political stage, the likelihood of the Tory party disciplining her, cautioning her, winding her in the current climate, I'd say was very slim, very, very slim, but not impossible. Whether or not that's naivety on my part or excessive optimism, I do not know. So what is she appealing to here? Is it Islamophobia? Is it because Sadiq Khan is a Muslim that she thinks she can pretend that he is an enemy of Jews? I don't know. Would she say the same about a white mayoral candidate or a Christian mayoral candidate? I don't know. That's why I'm asking you, what is she playing at? 0345 6060973 is the number that you need. Thank you, Dina. Carol's in Camden. Carol, what would you like to say?
Good morning, James. Just to give you my impression of the mayor, I'm a Jewish musician, and twice I've been invited to perform at City Hall.
You mean, I just thought for a minute, I know we're having a very serious conversation, Carol, but I think this will make you laugh. I thought you were about to do an impersonation of him when you said, I shall give you my impression of the mayor. I thought you were going to go all Mike Yarwood and Rory Bremner on me, but obviously that's not what you meant at all.
God forbid. No, you wouldn't want to hear that.
No,
absolutely
anyone's
not.
Got a good one. Go on.
No, just to say that, twice I've been asked to perform at City Hall for Holocaust Memorial Day, which, as you know, happens in January. It's a very serious, it takes most of the morning, and twice I've done it. And twice, Sadiq Khan has been there from beginning to end. It's a long ceremony, very serious. Gave a beautifully moving speech. And at the reception afterwards, insisted on shaking hands with being introduced and shaking hands with everybody present.
Yeah.
I just thought that's not the actions of somebody who is an anti-Semite in any way.
No, not that there was any suspicion that he might have been in the first place, was there?
Well, it would seem that some forces would like us to think that in order to get our votes.
Just this
obviously.
woman, though, actually. It's not even part of a broader narrative. I haven't seen, Boris Johnson would go anywhere in maligning and misrepresenting his political opponents. Even he didn't go here. So what is Susan Hall's calculation? Or what is... I suppose it's conference, it's a fringe meeting. A drink may have been taken. She may have been a bit uninhibited. We've all experienced what that can feel like. But it did sound a little bit more planned than that. What's the calculation?
Hijacking racism for her own ends, probably. She just thought, I'll jump on this bandwagon, a bit of clickbait here.
This should
Let's
work.
see what happens.
A week after having to explain why she'd apparently expressed public admiration of Enoch Powell. She thought she'd dive in and accuse Sadiq Khan of a form of racism. Carol, thank you. 0345 6060973 is the number that you need. Before the end of the programme today, I'm tempted to do a little run through of who has said the maddest or the daftest or the most dangerous thing at this conference so far. Michael Gove's just made a late entry for that. There is a politician called, I think, Claire Coutinho. I don't know if you've come across her. She's certainly in the running. We've already heard from Mark Harper and indeed from Andrew Bowie, both of whom have made bids for the crown, but it's only Tuesday. I'm conscious that there's more yesterday. Maybe we could do an update, but not actually award the crown until conference is finished, which means that we do it on Thursday morning. Here's some anti-Semitism for you. This is from Usman, who's in Ilford. He writes, I love how you're so perplexed by this. Many dismiss the power of the Jewish lobby. Most deny it even exists. But if one has the backing of the Jewish community, then you're onto a winner. At the very least, it ingratiates her with those of the Jewish faith and those who openly support Jews and talk against Muslims. So Usman's listening to a programme in which currently Jewish people are queuing up to say that he's not remotely anti-Semitic, and it's absolutely disgusting to suggest that he is. And Usman is hearing people providing proof of the existence of the politically influential Jewish lobby. So when I said to you earlier that I needed help from you in understanding some of the issues surrounding anti-Semitism over the years I've been doing this job, that's what I was talking about. That's anti-Semitism from Usman right there. But I doubt he'll ever be in a position to understand why. 12:30 is the time. Amelia Cox is here with your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC. James O'Brien on LBC.
Next Monday is no ordinary Monday on LBC. It's Make Some Noise Week, and we've teamed up with the people who help you love Mondays, read.co.uk, to make this year even bigger and better, because they are doubling your donations. When you donate online this week through the Big Give platform, Read will match those donations up to an incredible £175,000, and that amount is guaranteed. Huge thanks to the team at read.co.uk. Visit lbc.co.uk for the T's and C's and to donate. I'm James O'Brien. You're listening to LBC, and it's 12:32.
James O'Brien on LBC. James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 12:34. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where we're just trying to... If you want to make excuses for her, then you can, okay? Because I don't want to believe that this is quite as ugly as it originally appears to be. But why would the Conservative candidate for London Mayor claim that Jewish people in particular were frightened of Sadiq Khan? I can see how you make a case for being frightened of life in London, whether it's knife crime or speeding cars or the air quality that we're currently forced to breathe or whatever it might be. You could say that I want to be Mayor of London because I will make it safer. But what does Susan Hall mean when she suggests that Jewish people in particular are frightened of Sadiq Khan? Because it seems to me that if there is any racism in play here, it could be coming from her. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. 12:35 is the time. And for Jewish people listening to the programme, I think it is worth collecting answers to the question of whether or not you are frightened of Sadiq Khan. I'm expecting it to be a unanimous no, not particularly. Always slightly uncomfortable when people say, I really don't like him, but he's definitely not anti-Semitic. But you're more than welcome to say that. You can bring ULEZ into it, especially if you're not affected by it and have been persuaded by the Daily Mail that it's the end of civilization as we know it. Whatever it is going to be, but there it is. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. Gary's in Walthamstow. Gary, what's going on?
James, I wish I could tell you what's going on. I mean, as you've already said, I could understand if you know, they were talking about the horrific knife crime we've had on the youth. I think the youth in London have probably got more to be frightened of and need more help than what she's going on about. But the fact is, all you have to do is have a very tenuous link to him being an Asian or of the Muslim persuasion to make those connections. And I've heard so many comments since he's been in office, regardless of whether he's bringing in ULEZ, that it seems to have something to do in connection with who he is, other than being a politician. You know, I work for, well, I can't say, a public body, and I hear people saying, with some of the work that we're doing, oh, you're turning our city into a Mumbai slum.
Right. Really?
and yeah, absolutely. And I'm like, why that connection? And even some of the people that I know, they seem to connect Sadiq Khan with, you know, him being a foreigner and taking over our city and bringing Muslim...
you know, I'm glad to hear you say this, because it's a bit of an elephant in the room, isn't it? And you know, when he points out the conflation of racism with what we would loosely describe as legitimate objections to some of his policies, then they jump on him. They say he's accused everyone who doesn't like ULEZ of being Islamophobic or far right. He didn't say anything of the sort. I was there when it happened, but yes, it is as if the motivation has very little to do with what he's doing and everything to do with who he is or what he is.
That's absolutely what it is. And I can guarantee you there are people in the Tory party that did not and does not want Rishi Sunak at the head.
Well, it was one of the suggestions as to how he could have got beaten by a woman who subsequently got beaten by a lettuce, wasn't it?
Exactly. And it just shows, that we haven't moved that far in terms of our healing and our understanding of other groups of people and an acceptance that, by and large, we're all the same. We're basic human beings. I want our politicians to start bringing the people together, not dividing us more, not trying to find the simplest and the most divisive ways of trying to separate people just for your own end. You've been in power for the last 13 years and have caused the majority of, almost all of the mess. In fact, the Tories have been in power, I believe, 66% of the time since after the Second World War.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. So they've got to probably take 66% of the blame for what's gone on.
I think I can't fault anything that you've said, but I'm intrigued by what. Possibly we're imbuing her with a little bit more intelligence than we should. But how did she think this would work? Because unless people in North London have been queuing up to tell her that they're frightened of Sadiq Khan because they're Jewish, which seems unlikely, but the phone lines are open. Unless that is what's happened, she's made it up in the hope of achieving some form of political goal.
Yeah, the fact is, James, it doesn't have to be true, because there will be a percentage of people out there that will go, because of ULEZ and anything else that Sadiq's done that they don't particularly like, they can leap onto this. She's just added another step for them to reinforce their racism, and it's as simple as that. It's the same thing. Obviously, you had Jeremy Corbyn, you had Diane Abbott with her comments. So let's throw something else in there. And
but in both of those cases, as you've just conceded, that there were comments. There were things that you could point to, and whether you think they were exaggerated or embellished or not, there were seeds from which the accusation could grow. In the case of Sadiq Khan, I simply can't see any. 20-1 is the time. Stand by for our brief roundup, and I don't think it will be complete because there's so much madness unfolding before our very eyes, or not before our very eyes, before Natasha Clark's very eyes. LBC's political editor is at the Conservative Party conference in Manchester. I asked you yesterday, Natasha, about mood, and I think you said 5 out of 10. Outside, I have to tell you, it looks very bonkers. You've got Priti Patel and Nigel Farage jumping up and down together on a dance floor. You've got secretaries of state endorsing pretty much Facebook conspiracy theories from the actual conference stage, and then colleagues falling apart on live broadcast interviews while attempting to defend it. Have there been any highlights?
I think, I think I'm going to reverse my 5 out of 10 mood. I think I'm probably going to say it's now more like a 3.
Oh, okay.
Definitely feeling flatter than it was yesterday. And it feels like there's a lot of people here that are just like, what is the strategy coming out of this conference? What is the message that the Prime Minister's trying to have? Because, as you know, it's just been completely overshadowed by rows about tax, by Liz Truss storming the stage, by, like I say, a fair few fringe events that have gone a bit off-piste.
To put it mildly.
Yeah, that's saying it lightly, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
I don't think this is going hugely well. And, this is meant to be the last conference, probably, before an election. I don't see any strategy that's going through this, any sort of messaging, apart from this whole long-term decisions for a long-term future or whatever slogan is being bandied around. Apart from that, which firstly I think is kind of ridiculous because I don't think he's making any long-term decisions. It doesn't feel like there's any actual messaging. It doesn't feel like ministers are that united. It obviously doesn't seem like they're sort of singing from the same hymn sheet, that there's any one particular idea or strategy or message that they're trying to give. So it is feeling a bit flat here. People are saying there's not as many people as there were usually in previous years. They're saying that the footfall is down. Not as many people at fringe events. People saying, well, actually, we were turning people away from the tent last year and now we're getting everybody in. and not filling seats. Obviously, Liz Truss was pretty busy yesterday. That was a little bit of an exception.
I saw Has Brexit Failed fringe meeting was packed to the rafters as well. I presume that lasted about 3 seconds, did it, that meeting?
It probably did. But yes, it's not feeling great here in Manchester, to be honest with you. And there is some sort of talk that maybe having the conference before Labour's was a bit of a bad idea. There's some people today suggesting that.
Because it's already reactive, even though they're not actually they're inventing things and then reacting to them. At least if they'd done it after Labour, they could have reacted to things that Labour had actually said and done.
Exactly. And let's be honest, this whole HS2 row has now completely dominated it. Like, Rishi's been asked, all of his ministers have been asked, every single broadcast interview they're doing, they're on the back foot. They're not on the front foot. It doesn't feel like they're putting forward any positive vision for the country. It doesn't feel like they're talking about the problems that we're all facing outside of the conference hall. It feels very insular.
Although on the plus side, I gather there are spades in the ground.
There are spades in the ground.
There are definitely spades in the ground. I think that's close to becoming a catchphrase. Not necessarily a good thing, but there are spades in the ground. I think we should send
one of us out, see if we can find a spade.
Find a spade
these
in the ground.
Spades.
How much? Because Suella Braverman speaks this afternoon, and then Rishi Sunak speaks tomorrow. How much oversight does Downing Street have of what other ministers say from the conference stage? I appreciate there's a reason why fringe meetings are called fringe meetings, but would a Secretary of State, for example, be expected to clear a speech with Downing Street?
Yep.
Oh,
yeah, absolutely. Downing Street have every single clearance of every single speech. And let's not forget, Downing Street did have clearance of Suella Braverman's speech on migration last week.
Yes.
They signed off every word of that. So that all came from them. And usually there is a bit of tension between Suella Braverman's team and Number 10, where Suella Braverman's team trying to say, oh, we want to say this, and Number 10's trying to tone it down and saying, oh, no, we don't think so. But they did sign it off. Every single speech has to go through Downing Street, has to be checked, has to go through like an auto cue system, has to go into the system. So, yeah, they are going to be signing off everything that comes from that main stage today. Every single thing that comes out of here will have been endorsed by Rishi Sunak and his team. So you can say with confidence that whatever Suella Braverman gets up and says on her stage today is personally endorsed by him and all of his team.
Beautifully put, and bang on time as well. Natasha Clark asked, well, how long will we say new political editor? But I think it applies for now. Just giving you a quick roundup, very honest roundup of the sort of deflating balloon up in Manchester. And it's a deflation not really caused by outside criticism, but by activity from within, not least the bizarre and deeply sinister attempt by Susan Hall, the Tory candidate for London Mayor next year, to accuse Sadiq Khan of some form of anti-Semitism. Another text, they're all like this today. This is ridiculous, James. I've met him at a number of Holocaust memorial events, and he's always been very welcome and graciously received. This is creating a division that doesn't exist. I wonder whether for once, I mean, it would actually be the worst news for Sadiq Khan, actually, would be them sacking her off as candidate, I think, and finding somebody a bit better, a bit less likely to have Enoch Powell fan club membership in her back catalogue or inability to, deliver a speech without sticking a foot in her mouth. I don't know, and we probably won't find out today because it's already 12:46.
James O'Brien on LBC. James O'Brien on LBC.
12:49 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where the question of what on earth the Tory candidate for mayor Susan Hall was playing at when she claimed that Jewish people in North London were queuing up to tell her how frightened of Sadiq Khan they were by dint of their Jewishness. I mean, uniquely, perhaps, on this programme, because you can normally find people prepared to argue almost anything and to mean it as well. I don't actually mean that as a criticism or as, a reminder of Idiot's Corner, but I haven't got a single word of support for Susan Hall yet, either online, on air, or on text. Not a single one. 12:50 is the time. And I've got to be honest with you, I'm not surprised, because I think it's absolute Horlicks, which, of course, makes the question of what she's playing at a little bit more sinister. Yossi is in Chesham. Yossi, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello,
this is the second time we speak, and it's funny because I always want to talk to you about other stuff, but I always end up talking to you on Jewish matters, Jewish-Israeli matters. Okay. I mean...
Well, let's make a promise that although we're still going to return to territory like this in the future, you must try harder to ring in on other stuff.
I try. Trust me, I try. Anyway, look, I'm going to be very boring on this. It's just another just another tactic of obfuscating and distracting from the real issue, which is the fact that the Tories have failed us.
Nationally, I mean, she might have a case in London as a Jewish person.
No. I've actually before we spoke, I actually tried to verify what I'm going to say.
Oh yeah.
And then I went to the CST database.
Yes.
And I've looked for the number of terrorist attacks and anti-Semitic attacks. Maybe not much have been reported, but I didn't identify any increase since 2016 in terrorist attacks. If anything, we see more increase, from what I gather, in attacks from the extreme right.
Yes.
By comparison to,
but even there, so you're suggesting she's trying to conflate Islamist terrorism with a Muslim mayor?
No. I'm saying she's just trying to distract
to drum up any kind of negativity, any kind of division.
Exactly. And to be fair, if to take it further, if that is how she perceives reality, that they have a major problem. Because again, from what I know, and I get to speak sometimes with my, I don't live in London. Let's be clear. But from what I know and what I gather is that I can't identify any increase, any change, if anything. I mean, I think that to a point, the fact that Sadiq Khan is a Muslim, I think he probably is trying even harder, and taking into account the history of Labour under Jeremy Corbyn, I think he's trying to position himself as a friend of the Jewish community.
Of course he is, just as Keir Starmer has well, I think Keir Starmer, I think they both would have done anyway, but the mission became more urgent given what happened under the last leader. In fact, you mentioned the CST is the Community Support Trust, I think it stands for, doesn't it? Because she's now gone on. She's gone on GBB's and claimed that there have been about 1,000 anti-Semitic incidents in London this year. But the figures that you refer to, and the CST does a stand-up job of keeping track of all these incidents, that's only got 447 recorded incidents in the first half of 2023. So she's telling fibs there as well. It's mad, right?
Yeah.
Here's a question. I hope you'll forgive me if I phrase it incorrectly. But does it get tiring being used as a political football on account of your religion like this?
I don't know. I can't really answer you.
Fair enough.
It is tiring. It is depressing. But I mean, I suppose it's not unique to the Jews. I think
that's true.
the same is true of gays. The same the gay community. The same is true of. We've listened to what our illustrious Home Secretary did.
Yes.
I mean, in my case, I think it's a bit more complicated because I also happen to be Israeli.
Sure.
And there is whenever I go to Israel, I'm involved in the massive demonstrations. I don't know if you're aware of what's going on in Israel at the moment.
Not as aware as you, but I'm not completely ignorant.
Yeah.
So you mean demonstrations against the government?
Yes. And I find myself in a position where I'm utterly against the horrible government that is today in Israel. That is, by the way, using the same ploys as the Tories, as in distracting, creating, agitating hatred and all that kind of stuff. So the fact that Jews and the Israeli situation is being used, maybe not as much here, but it's being conflated, especially in the extreme.
So you're getting it from both sides, really. You're getting conflated with the government from one side, and you're protesting against it. You're being a critic of it on the other. Well, she said she'll never apologise for standing up for the Jewish community in the last few minutes, because she won't apologise for her comments and doesn't regret making them. So there it is, a real-time, live doubling down, Yossi.
Let me tell her that in 3 words: thanks, or 4, thanks, but no thanks.
4 words, you're correct. Thank you, Yossi. 12:55, rather more than 4 words that some of these people take. I'm not going to take votes yet, but I am going to take nominations. Who has said the stupidest thing or the nastiest thing? so far at the Tory party conference. Should we start with the one we haven't heard already, which is Claire Coutinho speaking to the rather splendid Sophie Ridge at Sky News about claims of a meat tax?
I just want to read a bit of your speech to you, because there was one section of it that really struck me. You said, it's no wonder Labour seems so relaxed about taxing meat. So Keir Starmer doesn't eat it, and Ed Miliband is clearly scarred by his encounter with a bacon sandwich. You didn't write that, did you?
I did actually write that. I think, it's good to have a light moment in your speech as well. But the point is actually...
They're not proposing a meat tax.
The point is actually very serious. So some of the things that Labour are proposing are incredibly hard for working families. So whether you have things like...
meat tax? That's what you're saying here.
Well, so the point is... They are proposing things which are pushing families too hard. So you've got things like the ULEZ tax expansion, which does cost families £12.50 a day. It's
not meat tax, though, is it?
But that is very difficult. And they've got things like proposing that you would decarbonise the electricity grid by 2030 again, which would result in very difficult choices for families.
Not meat tax.
And their plans to push up inflation by borrowing £28 billion. So the point that I was making is quite serious. Yes, that was a light-hearted moment in the speech, but the point is actually deadly serious, that if you push people too far in this country, you will lose the cause of climate change, something that I'm passionate about because I think it's really important that we get there.
But genuinely, there isn't a meat tax.
There isn't a meat tax. That, for the record, is how you should interview these people. You just keep hitting them with the fact that they have lied. They have made something up. They have invented a meat tax. And you can hear Claire Coutinho desperately trying to ride roughshod over the interviewer there and failing miserably. And that was in an interview. Mark Harper did it on stage.
But what is different, what is sinister, and what we shouldn't tolerate is the idea that local councils can decide how often you go to the shops and that they ration who uses the roads and when, and they police it all with CCTV.
Also completely invented, as became clear when his colleague Andrew Bowie attempted to defend it later.
We do not want local authorities dictating to people that they must choose to access those services within 15 minutes of their house, or however often they might need to access those services. That's what Mark Harper was saying today. Of course we want more services to be available locally and close to where people live. That's an eminently conservative thing to support, but we're not going to dictate to people that they must only access a service or go shopping within a 15-minute...
I understand you. I hear you. But this really gets to the heart of where the Conservative Party is positioning itself and how it is trying to conduct a debate. Nobody is proposing that they'll dictate whether you have to go within 15 minutes. They're saying, wouldn't it be nice if you could get to a shop within 15 minutes?
And more ridiculousness follows. And then from the ridiculous, of course, to the deadly serious, with this contribution from the Tory candidate for London Mayor.
I believe in this country, live in London. I live in North London, and I know the wealth and the joy of the community. But I tell you something else, I know how frightened some of the community is because of the divisive attitudes in Khan. One of the most important things that we can do when I become Mayor of London is to make it safer for everybody, but particularly for our Jewish community. So I will ask for as much help as I can get in London, because we need to defeat it.
And there it is. So more nominations, please, for the star of this year's Tory conference, and we'll run through them again tomorrow. Last word today goes to pedantic James in Uxbridge, who points out quite correctly that thanks but no thanks is in fact 3 words, not 4. It's just that one word happens to be repeated. I don't know, it's almost like a riddle. If you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on Catch Up on Global Player, where you can, of course, rewind live radio or enjoy the whole show podcast. You'll also find all of our shows there, all LBC's shows to catch up on, as well as the world's biggest podcasts. And remember, my interview with Naomi Klein this week speaks to a lot of the issues we touched on in the first hour. Rewind live radio on Global Player. Download for free from your app store or head to globalplayer.com. Coming up at 4 on LBC, it's Tom Swarbrick, but now it's time for Sheila Fogarty.
Thanks very much, James.
James O'Brien on LBC.